Well, hey there, friends. Guess what? This is it. Cybfest Northwest 2024 is this weekend, August 3rd, at the Kent Commons Community Center, just a few miles south of Seattle. Now, all of the information about the unofficial Transformers convention in the Pacific Northwest is available at cybfestnw.com. But before we get into the episode here, I'd like to tell you a little bit about this year's convention. Obviously, we are excited to welcome our featured guest, the one and only Sue Blue, the voice of RC. We also have an RC-inspired t-shirt design through our TeePublic store. We've got Carbot Darcy, our exclusive RC-inspired action figure with Blue Forge exclusive to Cybfest Northwest. We've got an exclusive print from artist Ben Hansen. We'll be hosting a live Q&A panel with Sue Blue. We've got an expanded dealer room with over 50 toy dealers and artists. We've got a Lego display featuring Transformers and G.I. Joe and other Lego builders. We'll have a Transformers Customs display. It's the return of the kids' play area along with the Bumblebee Camaro. We've also got robotics team. Cast Iron Orcas is coming back, so we have actual robots at our robot toy convention. We've got tons of contests, including the Transforming Contest, Michael Andrews' favorite, where it's a tournament-style contest where you keep the figure if you win. We have a coloring contest, pub-style trivia, and the Cybfest Northwest Sweep. Don't call it bingo, it's more like a convention stamp rally. We've got panels. We've got our friends from Swerve's Bar talking about their podcast and their homebrew D&D, as well as an organizer roundtable where we'll talk about the making of the exclusive figure, Carbot Darcy. We may talk about some San Diego Comic-Con reveals as well, but more importantly, it's open chat with the Cybfest Northwest organization team, of which I am proud to be a part of. It's a fun way to kind of close out the show. We'll also have representatives from Paramount, a local promotion company. We'll have a table handing out mini posters, and we will be screening the brand new trailer of Transformers 1. And finally, lastly, but certainly not leastly, we will be closing out the dealer room and the show with our raffle, which if you've ever seen any of the videos or pictures, the raffle is probably the pinnacle, most exciting bit of Cybfest Northwest. It gets straight up buck wild. You're not going to want to miss it. Again, that is Cybfest Northwest coming up this weekend, August 3rd at the Kent Commons Community Center in lovely Kent, Washington, just a few miles south of Seattle in my hometown. And I have two Mike's Too Furious buttons for you as well, so roll up to my table. I will have a table there, and I'll be running around helping out wherever I can. But if you're a fan of the podcast, hit me up. I would love to do selfies and give you two Mike's Too Furious buttons and just hang out and say hey. So would love to see you there. And if you need more information, check out cybfestnw.com. That's cybfestnw.com. And now, on with our episode on Sorry, No One's Home.
Autobots, transform and roll out!
Mike! So many Mike! So many Mike! So many Mike! So many Mike!
Well, hey there, folks. Welcome back for another thrilling, exciting episode of Two Mikes, Too Furious Animated Transformers, where we talk about Transformers Animated one episode at a time from two different points of view. My name is Mike Seibert. I have never watched Transformers Animated before this project. I am your first-time watcher, but I am not on this journey unguided. Joining me, as always, is the Spark Soul brother, the serial rewatcher. It's my friend, author Michael Andrews.
Yes, thank you. Hello, Mike. Thank you. How's it going?
It's going great. You sound sleepy again. Are you still sleepy from
the
last night again?
Pulling back the curtain a little bit, we planned these last two recording sessions next to the only two events I had planned with friends the entire summer. So now I'm like off the hook for social events for the rest of the summer. But yeah, I had to put in another one last night.
Oh my God.
I had 10 people over, 10 people in my home. I don't even remember the last. I didn't even know if I knew 10 people separately, let alone enough to get them all in the same room together. Unheard of.
Goodness. Well, I want to come back to that in just a second. I'm going to see if I can learn from the mistakes of the past, because as you've heard me on the last 2 episodes, Too Furious, I've one of my stumbling block opportunities is not getting to our guest right away and letting them sit as we just like, oh, tell me about the games that you played. Are you the Settlers of Catan? Did you take a ticket to ride? Anyway, we'll litigate that momentarily, but we've promised that it's going to be Guestapalooza, and this is the grand finale of Guestapalooza for season 2 of Two Mikes Too Furious before the finale, which we're really excited about. But joining us, this is to say that it's a long time coming would be an understatement. You hear from them literally in every episode during our audience feedback, our listener feedback segment. And he's been such a terrific supporter of our show. And I feel like his voice is like part of the fabric of the show, but now joining us for real, so his voice could actually be heard on Two Mikes Too Furious. Please give it up for the one and only number one super fan of Two Mikes Too Furious. It's Matthew Barberio. Thank you for joining us.
Hello there. I've never had an introduction like that before.
Isn't he the best in the business at introductions?
He is.
It's fantastic.
Well, thank you. That's very sweet, you guys. I appreciate that. So, Matt, again, thank you for taking the time to join us. Like I said, it's been a long time coming because, like, you've been with us as a number one super fan since pretty much the beginning.
I think so.
And again, your support means the world to us, and we're really grateful for like the thoughtful insight and commentary, and more than anything, your love of the live action movies, so that my dude Michael Andrews doesn't feel so lonely.
Yes, I personally have to thank you for that. I mean, sometimes it's just great to have your notes and messages to talk about. It's like, oh, we didn't even think of that on the show. It's almost like you're our like producer or something behind the scenes, like giving us show notes to work from.
So, Matt, every podcast is somebody's first podcast. Why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, and let's talk about a bunch of different stuff. I'd like to talk about your Transformers fandom. I'd like to talk about some live action stuff, but also just Transformers animated and kind of your Transformers origin story, all kinds of stuff. We're going to be here for a while, so just kind of settle as we get to do this get to know you sesh. But yeah, just not to put you too much on the spot there, but tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been a fan of Transformers since I think 2007, when I was first introduced to the live action movies. And then over time, I kind of fell out of it a little bit. And then it was like 2018 or 19, I found Transformers Prime on Netflix.
Yes.
And once I saw that, I was back. I started watching all the movies again, every show I could. And, TFA was one of them that I looked at. I'm like, I don't know. The animation's a little weird, but I've heard it's great. Let's give it a try. And I think I binged the whole series in 4 days.
Wow.
I think that was when probably 2020 hit and everybody was at home doing nothing.
Right. That's crazy. Yeah, I was just to break in here. I think everyone kind of has that reaction too. It's like, what is this? Is this for me? I don't know what this is. It looks weird. And then all of a sudden, a day has gone by. You forgot to sleep. You've watched the whole series. You just get hooked in.
So Matt, one of the other things I wanted to talk about, I think I've only mentioned it maybe a couple times during the listener feedback sessions, but like one of the things that's really fascinated me and interested me is something you have in your Twitter bio, saving wildcats with Big Cat Rescue. And I'm I'm super interested in community outreach and doing stuff for our furry friends. Is that a passion of yours? Is that something you'd like to get into here?
Sure. Yeah. It was like 2016 or so. I found Big Cat Rescue on Facebook, and they were saving wildcats in the wild and in captivity in the U.S., and I loved their mission. And from then on, I just became super passionate about helping animals and, doing what I could to make the world better for them.
Awesome. That's
Terrific.
awesome.
Yeah. No, that's pretty cool. Friends, shall we talk about an episode? We are talking about Sorry No One's Home. That is season 2, episode 11, overall episode 27 of Transformers Animated, airing on June 28th, 2008 in the US, and written by Todd Casey. He's written scripts to Batman Brave and the Bold, and was an assistant to Tom DeSanto on Transformers. And really the only other, looks like there's a season 3 episode coming up that we haven't seen yet, but his only other TFA episode is Nature Calls.
Yeah, which we have a little nod to as we get into this show. But before that, before we even jump into the episode, I need to have a little bit of a retraction here, because last episode, my preview haiku, I was thinking of an entirely different episode. And I guess not to do spoilers for Mike, but Matthew, I was thinking of an episode that also the Autobots aren't present for, and Sari is kind of left to her own devices, and involves one of the Constructicons. I think you might know the one I'm talking about, but I really thought that was this episode coming up. And no, this was the Home Alone spoof episode, which I was pretty psyched about.
Yeah, I was, and I was going to ask you about that too, because like I listened to our previous episode before recording with you guys, and I'm like, I've watched this episode twice, and who's the big guy? I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, I completely forgot this episode existed. And, we'll get into it a little bit, but halfway through, I was like, I'm so glad even though this is a really weird and silly episode in a lot of ways, the genius of like someone looking at this show and being like, oh, we have a perfect Home Alone spoof set up here. We have to do this. Like there must have been like, stop the presses. We need to do this episode because it's so, on the nose.
Well, and it's funny there too, because like, a bunch of things are suddenly crystallizing and making sense for me too, because like, I remember when we were talking to Lita and about all of the things that we thought Black Friday was. It's like we talked about like, it's going to be, Sari and Bumblebee stuck in a mall, and it's going to be like a chopping mall situation. And Michael Andrews, you had said something about like, oh yeah, maybe it's like a Die Hard riff. Maybe it's like a Home Alone riff, that kind of thing. But now that you done outed yourself,
congratulations, you played yourself.
I thought you were just being cagey and dodgy like you usually are, like, ooh, I wonder if there's ever going to be a Sorry Die Hard / Home Alone spoof. I wonder if that's something that's ever going to happen. Who could know? Mike Seibert? I guess we'll find out together. But in this case, it's like, I think my dude done forgot about this episode.
I did. I completely blanked on it, but wow. Yeah. I had to own up to it. I thought about just glancing over it, but no, I had to own up to it. So,
this is so much funnier.
Yeah.
I will literally never let you live this down. This is amazing.
Life imitates art or something. I don't know. Pick one.
So, we had discussed having you on the show, but then also trying to find the right episode. And unfortunately, you had reached out to us, and it's really yanking back the curtain literally the day after we recorded SUV. So like that was your first shot. You wanted in on the Society of Ultimate Villainy, and having been through that episode, I understand why. And I think everyone else does also. And we'll just leave it there for now. But no, and like your second choice was Sorry No One's Home. So before we kind of get into the meat of the episode discussion, could you talk about what resonates with you about this episode in a way that evidently it didn't with Michael Andrews. Dude done forgot about it. I told you I wasn't going to let it go. Now I'm
That's fair. I'm owning it.
Running joke for the whole episode now.
You got it.
So this one, it's a really important character episode for Sari. It's a good character builder, makes her more of a, like, she can hold her own now. She doesn't have to rely on the Autobots so much. And it's really fun because it's like Home Alone. You get this back and forth with the battle with a Decepticon versus the Constructicons. It's a good contrast there. So it's a really fun episode. And it's one of my favorites because of that.
That's a great point, actually. I mean, not only is it kind of like the fun one before things get dark, right? Like you do your fun episode before your finale. But it's also, we haven't, Sari's been pretty down in the dumps this season so far, right? Like we haven't seen like her hero moment of like her kind of busting back. Like she's really been just down on her luck this entire season. And I think this was a last chance to just be like, hey, she's okay. She's still the tough kid that we remember. And she's supposed to be here. She deserves to play with these guys.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And it's interesting with as intricate as the plot for season 2 has been, it feels like for me, like down this like last stretch, it feels like there's almost too many balls in the air. And one of the things that is kind of occasionally forgotten about is the plight of Sari Sumdac. It's like you said it best, Michael Andrews, where like, she's really down in the dumps. I mean, she's been, her father is still missing. I mean, we are 11 episodes in of this guy being missing. She's been kicked out of her own home. And while, as we see through this episode, she's kind of made a home of sorts with the Autobots, we also know that hasn't been an easy adjustment. But one of the other things, though, is like the show kind of forgets about that from time to time. Like, in our previous episode on Black Friday, like when it starts with Sari and Bumblebee visiting Meltdown in prison, it's like that's your reminder of just like, oh, right, this whole thing has happened several episodes ago. We just have not talked about it. So like it was a good reminder, and I like that this episode comes on the heels of that one, so that it keeps kind of like the Sari story has kind of moved from like the C plot more into like the B and A plot, which I really like. And I think also to your point, Michael Andrews, this is definitely a calm before the storm episode. Like I have not seen the season 2 finale, but if it's anything like Megatron Rising, I mean, we're in for a real ride. So it is a good narrative move to have something that's a little lighter on its feet, but while also still catching up with characters we may have forgotten about, and then also laying track for some future stories, which is what we know that TFA does so very well. So we start at the Autobot base, and right away I love this sequence because and again, I think a lot of our conversation is going to be driven by like, hey, I liked this in the last episode, but like you get to see Prowl doing some ninja training. He's going through this obstacle course, and he's demonstrating some sweet Ninja Gaiden moves where he's tumbling and jumping and doing handstands and stuff. And I just love seeing Prowl being a badass.
Yeah. Oh, it was cool. I mean, I love the obstacle course. I love that we're back to some ninja training. You have to remind the audience that Prowl's a ninja. Let's not forget. He's still doing it every day. He's killing it. He goes through this training, and I love that they're using like the factory load lifter equipment. I love when that anytime that like robots are using like large things as like they're using like a lamppost as a toothpick or something like that. Like I love that's something animated does really well. So he goes through it and kills it, and then Sari just biffs it, right? Like she's decked out in her rollerblading gear. She's ready to be an instant ninja. She's Bumblebee, right? She's like, I can do this. Let me do this. Give me 5 seconds. I'll run through this course and I'll be a ninja. Like that's such a Bumblebee like mindset. And yeah, just pretty much takes a digger on the very first obstacle.
It's so funny how Sari is just so defiant too, because like you said, she's got like the giant rollerblading helmet on, and she makes some kind of comment about like, oh man,
I can do it just as good as you, blindfolded.
As the helmet like tips over her face and stuff, and she's like actually blindfolded. I thought that was pretty funny, but like they're having this conversation. Prowl's like, you know what?
Let's try it at 1/4 speed.
We've talked about in previous episodes where Prowl is occasionally impatient. And I like, Michael Andrews, how you brought in like the Bumblebee aspect, but Prowl is inordinately patient with Sari here. Like, he just kind of like, tips up her helmet and says, well, you gotta practice. And even when she's just like giving him guff, like, yeah, let me at him, she like can't even get up on like the apparatus by herself. And he just very patiently just kind of like scooches her up. And I wonder what it is that before she eats it, and again, Prowl is very helpful even then, I wonder why he is so patient with her.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you both, and maybe we'll start with you, Matthew. Did you get the sense that this was a formal training? Like at first blush, I was just like, oh, I guess, Sari just wants to do something fun and funny. But like, I was like, I wonder if we're missing a scene of like, hey, you need to be able to protect yourself. Is this like a formal training session? Matthew, let's start with you. Did you get any vibe of that?
It did seem like it was maybe a bit of a formal training. I did get that sense. I don't know if it ended up paying off in the end, since she lands flat on her face, literally.
Yeah.
But I think that might have been the intent.
Well, let me throw this at you. So we know thanks to Michael Andrews, a trope in this show is that when you are in trouble, your punishment is you get to go train with Prowl. We've seen that a number of times. And I don't know if it's in the written page. I don't know if it's subtext. I'm inclined to agree with you guys, especially given how geared up she is. Like she is ready to go with the rollerblades and the helmet and all that stuff. But I wonder if this is kind of like punishment of sorts for, in a way, kind of instigating the meltdown incident to begin with. Like you could argue that the dominoes of that is Bumblebee and Sari going to see meltdown to begin with.
Well, yeah, and if we're following the Home Alone parallel, is this the equivalent of sleeping with Fuller on the 3rd floor? Is Prowl going to have too much Pepsi and wet the bed? Like, is this the punishment that Kevin McCallister had to go through? I don't want to train with Prowl. He's going to get oil everywhere.
Yeah, right, exactly. But speaking of, I think you're closer in analogy than you realize, Michael Andrews, because here's where Bulkhead comes in. And this dude is having like a full-on fit. He's just like being like real paranoid. And like, there's this noise, this dripping noise that is bothering him. And he's just like, hey, man.
What is that?
Shut up a sec. Do you hear that? And for their part, like Sari and Prowl, both of them are just like shrug. They just kind of like exchange different shrugs, but it turns out this dripping is a very real thing. And I do like that the trajectory of our podcast has been a chronicling of Transformers body horror, because I mean, like, see also our previous several episodes about oil legislation, but now we get yet another aspect of oil legislation, and pin this for later, because that legislation is going to get real uncomfortable once the Constructicons show up again. Spoilers alert for that. but like we see that like Bumblebee is just sitting there watching TV with his arms slung over the couch real casually, just leaking oil like a sieve, just plip, 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 plip. And that's obviously the noise that is driving Bulkhead nuts. And it's interesting, kind of recontextualizing their relationship from Auto Boot Camp, Bumblebee and Bulkhead. I mean, it seems to be that like something that might be trivial. Like, I mean, sure, the oil leak is annoying, but I don't think it's to the level that it would send red lightning crackling all through you. Like, I mean, like Bulkhead has a full on fit here. And I don't think that Bulkhead gets to that level unless they have countless stellar cycles of this kind of stuff happening on the regular. It feels to me that like, I mean, again, Bulkhead's response is kind of like disproportionately angry, but then again, if I had to deal with Bumblebee washing out from the academy and getting stuck on a space bridge crew for however many cycles, that would be pretty irritating.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I like to picture this, like these college days where Bulkhead and Bumblebee are like dorm roommates, right? And like Bulkhead's the clean one. He's coming back from class where he's worked hard and taken notes. And there's Bumblebee just on the couch with a big gulp and dripping oil out of his arm. And like, yeah, I'll pick this stuff up later, Bulk. Like, yeah, we've all had that roommate, right?
Yeah. Empty candy wrappers all over the place, empty big gulp cups, and again just leaking oil all over the place.
It's like Fry's apartment in Futurama. There's like an owl stuck in a cobweb.
right. Yeah, and this I don't know, this sequence is troubling in a lot of ways, because like one thing, like Bumblebee doesn't seem to be all that concerned that he's just leaking oil. Like, I mean, I keep wanting to say dripping, but it is, and as we see later in the episode, it is just downright pouring out of him. And it would be the same thing if, like, let's say, I don't know, you get a cut on your arm and your response to that is just to sit and watch TV as it is just pouring out of your arm and like dripping onto the floor. And then, of course, once the doctor wants to go check it out, of course, your instance is to do windmills and just fling your fluid all over the place. And it's just disgusting on a number of different levels. But like, I don't know, man. I thought this whole thing was really bizarre. Like, how's this even happen? Like, how's this even start?
Yeah, I wrote in all caps, what a weird intro. And like Ratchet, at that point, Ratchet scoops him up with electromagnets, which I love. I always love to see those magnets getting some use. But saying Bumblebee needs a tune-up. And I just, and this is right before kind of Optimus barges in and has this recording. But I was just like, what a strange intro. But then, through the lens of Home Alone, I finally pieced it together. This is the equivalent of showing the very full house at the beginning of Home Alone, where it's just like there's so much chaos and stuff going on. Someone's pissed at somebody else. There's just too many bodies and everyone. It's just too much. I only just had that realization as we were talking about the scene, and I was like, oh yeah, if we're doing beat for beat Home Alone, this is the scene where Joe Pesci's in a cop uniform watching all this chaos happen.
Right. Well, and the dynamic is just odd. So like you had mentioned the thing with Ratchet, and I want to go back a half step where like, Bulkhead is going off on being like, picks him up by his face. Again, so much face grabbing. Like, I feel like we need to do like a face grabbing button also, where like he just picks him up by his little face and hauls him off. But like this scene where like Ratchet does like the magnet thing, it almost like, I'm like, is it that small boy's head is just going to pop clean off if Ratchet just isn't pulled the right way. I mean, like, and it's not as grotesque as I think it is, because head swapping is apparently something that's very much in TFA canon. So I think I'm okay with that. But that comment about Bumblebee needing a tune-up from Ratchet, it reminds me that not unlike a teenager, taking care of like your own health and hygiene and stuff, Bumblebee always needs a tune-up, it seems. See the incident with slow-mo, and like any other number of problems that Bumblebee has had where it's always like, oh man, you should get that checked out. And he's like, no, I'm fine. I'm a kid, for fuck's sake. I'm functionally immortal. That kind of thing.
I'm a kid,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's kind of the thing here too. And, you kind of take that analogy kind of that direction as well, as he's just being a stinky boy at that point, just being gross.
Yeah. Just a scab on his knee, right. From playing outside.
Yeah. And just like, just scratching at it and picking on it and just letting it go. Nasty. So Optimus comes in and he sees on the news, because they're watching TV. You see Mixmaster and Scrapper, and they are just like in front of a auto supply shop, just chugging oil by the barrel, just being miscreants. And there's this conversation about do they remember? Even if they don't, we still have to deal with them because they're just running amok in the city.
Yeah, I was going to bring up too, when you kind of tripped over the word Constructicons, I had a lot of those moments in just typing up my notes for this episode, because they were flip-flopping back in the last time we saw them, between being called Constructobots when they were kind of more Autobot aligned, and Constructicons when they were Decepticons. But it seems like in this episode, they're kind of back to being sort of rogue entities, right? Like they're not super aligned one way or the other. I mean, they're certainly not heavily rooted in the Decepticon camp. So yeah, I was like, what are we calling him at this point?
Yeah. Well, even worse than that, they are riddled with the amnesia. So it's interesting to think of the state that they were left in at the end of that episode. Like, and even then the Autobots then were like, well, let's just kind of see where they end up. It's like, guys, you lobotomize these folks and then let them out into the world. What'd you think was going to happen? Not necessarily a great leadership move on Optimus's part. And it kind of underscores the unpleasantness of how the Constructicons were left the last time we saw them. Like there's no surprise here that they end up going with Blitzwing to join the Decepticon cause at the end of this episode. It's like there's no other way this could have gone. Again, spoilers alert for the end of the episode. But
right. Matthew, remind me, you had some comments about Mixmaster and Scrap from the last episode. Are these characters, these iterations, like iconic to you? Do you like this? Do you not like this version of them? Where are you at on that?
I do like them. I like them better in this episode than the last episode.
When they're not chasing tailpipe, literally. Yeah, yeah, I got a little bit of like, I've had it a few times during this show of like, you may not like that iteration of the character first, but the second time you see him, it's like, oh, my friends are back. Like, I'm excited to see what happens here.
I had that with Black Arachnia.
Yeah.
I liked her better the second time.
We know Mike Seibert did.
Yeah. So there's back at HQ, there is a little bit of legislation with Sari here about how they want to handle the Constructicon menace. Like, Optimus is like, hey man, we need to go find these guys. And Sari is obviously like, well, take me with you. And this feels like a conversation ripped from season 1. I feel like this is a conversation that happens so that the plot of this episode happens. But it did strike me funny where Sari once again has to remind Optimus Prime, like, hey man, I'm a member of this team.
Remember when I kicked that barnacle monster's butt all alone?
And Optimus, out of an abundance of caution, like his heart's in the right place because he knows that these Constructicons are a bit of wild cards. because they know that basically they're stumbling around brainwashed. Well, I don't know, not brainwashed, lobotomized or something, but they're at like their base forms. You know, they're as if they were first birthed from the Allspark energy, but like other than that primal need to feed on oil, that's potentially dangerous. Like they're already knocking over auto shops and things like that. But like Optimus is like, well, yeah, sure. Sorry, you're proficient,
But a human child is still no match for a 2-story robot.
that might be a little bit out of your league. And so obviously they, transform and roll out. But like, Sari is very put out by all this.
Yeah, there's two little good moments that I like here too. One, I think Optimus is making a great point. I mean, we can't forget like how legitimately he was concerned for Sari and Bulkhead in that episode we last saw, the Constructicons. And he makes this great point of, they almost killed you the last time, and that was them trying to be nice. Like that's when they were like, clearly on our side. And they still almost did that. This is just no place for you. They have no disregard. It's almost like he's saying there's sort of a honor amongst villains when they're having a normal fight, but these two are the Joker. They're pure chaos. They're just swinging around. This is not a fight for you. I think that's kind of always been sort of a trope of like heroes versus villains, especially in Transformers. Like they kind of know what, especially between Optimus and Megatron, they've always kind of had like this little back and forth. It's kind of like they know what they're getting into with each other.
Well, and to give credence to that further, when we see the fight with Blitzwing, who is the actual Joker from time to time, but there is still like that whole perspective of like my fight is with the Autobots. No need to necessarily involve all of these civilians unless he's like, throwing trucks at him and stuff. But Blitzwing takes Ratchet hostage, not like a fistful of squishies, which he easily could do. And to the point where Blitzwing lets them huddle up and just kind of like waits for them to figure it out. So that definitely gives credence to kind of like your honor among Autobots and Decepticons type thing. Even though they're in an active war, there's still kind of like, rules of engagement that they seem to respect. That actually you make a really good point, because these unaffiliated Constructobots, they are total wild cards, and it almost doesn't matter how Sari defeated that barnacle monster the last time. Like, Space Barnacles is no match for Constructobots, I guess, is kind of the takeaway there.
Well, yeah, that's the other point that I really liked here. At first when she mentions that she survived the barnacle monster and held her own against that, and I thought this was just a nod to Todd Casey's last episode that he wrote, and it is, right? It's a nice little throwback to that, but it's still a very valid point. Like she was Ellen Ripley in that episode. She was kind of the last survivor of that, and really it was all thanks to her. So that is the moment you'd point to if you want to make a case for I can hold my own. That is the biggest Sari hero episode we've had up until this point.
So Prime catches up with the Autobots already en route to go find the Constructicons. And this is where we get some real Bumblebee oil legislation here. And like, this is, I don't even want to mess around with the logistics of like, why is he leaking oil from his door? Because then that invites commentary about like, well, are they cars? Are they really cars? Are they just mimicking cars? Even when as a Transformer, the interior is a vehicle interior, your physiology isn't necessarily one-to-one with auto parts. It's like, sure, you probably have actual auto parts in there. Like, I mean, again, taking it back to Transformers 2007, it's like, I talk so much about, that iconic Optimus transformation, but the one that really blows my skirt up every time I see it is the Bumblebee one, where it's like, like his arm like almost like tears out of his side and he like pounds his fist down, and like as he transforms up, you can see like brake calipers and all kinds of like, cool bits in there that are as much a part of his physiology as his Cybertronian bits. So even though here it's the door of a car, and it's like, well, why is oil leaking out of a door? That's not where oil is. Well, it's still his arm. So it's like, it's not like when he's in vehicle mode that part of him stops being part of his arm. So
yeah, things are going to get like Kill Bill level bodily fluids real quick, right? Like it's more oil is coming out of Bumblebee than blood could come out of a human, and he's just nonplussed by it. He's like, you got another bumper sticker to slap on it? As we'll see shortly. I mean, it's nothing to him.
And that's the other thing that's so troubling. It's like he is disinterested at all times, and that is so weird. Like, I don't know, like if I get like a paper cut, like that's, while it may not be causing me like immense pain, it certainly is irritating, and I certainly want to treat it in some kind of way. But it is odd that even being a disgusting boy child person, like he seems not just disinterested, but like aggressively uninterested in treating this in any way, and even has contempt for Bulkhead when he slaps the sticker on there later, which again just very troubling. Like I guess this is all a thing to set up the thing with the Constructicons, but it's like in a podcast like this where we're like really drilling down deep, it's like, why is this happening? This is gross.
What I want to know, where did he get the sticker?
Yeah,
that's a great question.
Yeah, it is like a little like fourth wall breaking a little bit. It's like, the I Heart Autobots kind of a thing. It's like, did someone make this up? Was this from like one of the press conferences or conventions, or is this is a little goofy?
Are they selling merch now to pay for their warehouse?
Yeah, they don't have Sumdac's money to rely on. They had to find some other source of income.
That's right. It's you need electricity to run that enormous television. Well, if anything, you gotta rivets aren't cheap. Like you gotta stay in rivets, because like this warehouse plant that they live in does seem to burn through rivets a lot. So we catch up with Sari. She is sulking in her beanbag chair watching TV, lamenting that she has been left home alone, but as you will. But also during that realization, she drops a incredibly relevant piece of information that I think on my second viewing is kind of what kind of tweaked my melon about the Optimus choosing to leave Sari behind thing. Because first time through, I didn't notice it as much, but like she says out loud, she's like, well,
how can they find those construction bots without my key?
Because presumably when Megatron had the Constructicons under his thrall, where he was sharing some of his delicious private blend, I would imagine that he incorporated their signal dampening technology with them, because that comes into play later. Like, when Bumblebee is being all pissed off about them wasting time and about why they can't find the Constructicons. But I thought that this was like a necessary bit of writing here, where Sari cedes that, like, well, they need me because they need my key, because they can't detect their energy signatures without me. But it's almost over her shoulder, to the point where, I had to go through that second time through for it to really cement with me, because I was too busy, as we're already getting to. She says the titular line. She's like, she does come to the realization that she is truly home alone.
This moment here, like the first thing she does is raid the vending machines. And this is a small point, but I kind of got caught up on it and wrapped it into it. So I'll ask you, Matthew, did you think that the key was like somehow like making more candy come out of it than was actually in the machine? Or was this literally just she used the key to like steal some candy? Like, I just thought all of a sudden she's, pooled in candy. Was the Allspark creating candy at this point?
It did kind of seem that way. I don't think a vending machine can hold that much candy.
Exactly. So regardless, we are treated to a Home Alone montage where Sari is stuffing her face with so much candy. She turns the Prowl obstacle course into like an amusement park ride. Like strapping herself to like one of the crane arms. And I'm a sucker for goggles, so I thought that was a cool look where she's got like the helmet and the goggles on.
I got astronaut training simulator vibes from that. You know, that centrifuge or whatever you always see in movies. I don't even know if that's a real device employed by NASA, but I feel like that's all a trope of every movie. You see someone strapping into that.
Yeah, I see it in every movie. I even saw that in like a documentary about the Blue Angels, like where they just put you in the centrifuge to like, simulate gravity. But what's interesting though is that it's not for fun. So it's like, why does Sari think this is fun?
Such a weirdo. You know, it's funny you mentioned the goggles because I also wrote, I'm just going to say this verbatim. I wrote down, love her goggles, but LOL, she would literally be dead. Like, this isn't a fun thing. She's like, I don't think she could have survived that.
I mean, at least she belts herself in, kind of safety first, like always. But yeah, no, she should be super dead at this point.
Like ties herself on with like a teddy bear and some Twizzlers and like, all right, let's do this thing. There was a little bit of depth in this moment because we see her go from like vending machine raiding to riding the centrifuge. And then instead of going to a completely different thing, it's almost like the centrifuge thing reminded her, oh, I want to prove myself that I can do Prowl's training. Like, instead of just going and like having actual fun, she like refocused on that moment of like, oh, I want to prove I can do this. And I think that's an important kind of Home Alone element too, was like at some point he does the laundry. At some point, even though he thinks, I just want to bring this up, a little Home Alone conjecture, because what's fascinated me in recent years is like rewatching that movie just this last Christmas. Kevin McCallister thinks his family is dead magically, or for what, like he doesn't think they're bad. He thinks a magical wish to Santa has made his family disappear truly. And watching that movie, watching him operate, being like, oh yeah, they don't exist anymore. I'm just like blown away. Maybe that's too in depth to dig into that movie, but I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's a fascinating dynamic to consider because it's like, we watching the movie know where Kevin's family is because, we're intercutting back and forth with them the whole time. But you're absolutely right. From Kevin's perspective, they've been raptured. It's like they've been Thanos snapped. They're in the blip. They're living in the Soul Stone or whatever the hell happens to those folks.
And so when he's doing things like the laundry and like these household items, he's not doing them in the event that they'll return home and be impressed with him. He's just operating. And this is kind of what we're seeing with Sari here. She's doing this ninja course without, she doesn't think the Autobots have disappeared from existence, but I don't think she has any intent of like proving or telling Prowl like I did the course. Like she's just doing it to say she did it.
Exactly. She's growing up and developing as a character. And man, you're really blowing my mind with this Home Alone stuff because like the thing with Kevin McCallister is like everything that he does, and you see his skills develop as he grows up and all of that. But like, you're right. They're everything is with an eye to the future. Like this is permanent. This is how I have to change my lifestyle. Like this is how I adjust to my new reality. That's a fascinating perspective to a interesting lens to look at that through.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. From time to time, I do have good points.
I love it. So we pick up with the Constructicons as they are just not unlike Mardi Gras, they are just stumbling around publicly drunk in the streets, just open container, just freaking chug-a-lugging as they go. A real Girls Gone Wild situation here, right there on the Vegas Strip. But then this is the sequence that we alluded to way back at the top. And this is where things start to get really uncomfortable because, Scrap finishes off his barrel, and it's like, oh man, we need to get more, and immediately mixes all like,
Yo, Scrap, check it out. Oil.
He's got the scent. Like he is a bloodhound for this stuff, and he's all like sniffing the air. He's like, oh, what's all of this? And of course, they see this. I don't even know how to describe the length and depth of this oil trail that Bumblebee has left, because I've had older cars before and I've had my share of oil leaks, but I'm not leaving entire pools down the entire interstate that is so easy to follow like this. This first puddle that Mixmaster rolls up on is so deep and vast that he could just take a full fingerful. Like it's like cake batter or something. He's, first of all, you're eating cake batter off the ground. Let's start with that. Don't eat off the street. That's disgusting. So
oil's only been here 5 seconds. We're good.
But yeah, this whole thing, this whole imagery is disgusting and disturbing, because he just takes a full fingerful and just sucks on it for a troubling amount of time, and he's like, ooh, yeah, that's the good stuff. He even says something to the effect of
Ain't the sweetest grade I've had, but it's good enough.
Gross.
This moment was not just a roller coaster moment for me. It was more like an elevator drop. It was more like Tower of Terror, high and low here, because on one hand, I was really worried if this oil thing was going to pay off, right? This dripping and all this thing and the bumper stickering. As a writer, I was like, where are they going with this? If this doesn't pay off in some way, I'm going to be out. And then it does pay off. And it's like, oh, this is a trail leading back to the base for them to follow. But then I was also horrified. I was like, please no. Because as much as I hate to bring back fluid legislation, what is oil to these guys? I mean, right. To put it this way, Mike, when we were doing our original fluid legislation and you had your famous line about, is this, blood, semen, or urine? Or, at no point did we think, well, you should drink it. No matter what we thought the oil was, we weren't like, well, let's consume it. And now we're clashing worlds where I almost wonder if they wrote themselves into this situation. They're like, shoot, do you know that we did an episode where oil was blood and maybe poop? And we also did an episode where it's beer. And now we're coming back together. What are we going to do? The only logical thing, make the Constructibots vampires.
Yes, exactly. I mean, that's the only way to go.
I even put that in my notes, which I forgot to bring in here today.
It's going off the cuff. He's Caleb Carter.
Exactly. So Matt, let me ask you this. So as somebody who has been enjoying our show as a listener from the beginning and have listened to our oil discourse in real time, I guess from a civilian standpoint, what's your take on all this oil legislation? Are we just a bunch of sickos that are out of our minds? Maybe ground us a little bit here.
No, I really wonder the same thing, because I was watching it. I'm like, so basically they're vampires drinking his blood. Ew.
And getting drunk off of it somehow. And it's just so strange.
My only thought is maybe it's in the way it's refined somehow.
Oh, possibly. Possibly.
That's the only thing I can think, because otherwise it's just gross.
Yeah, and I just didn't think that there'd be this is like the secret thread running through this entire series so far. I mean, we keep coming back to this again and again. It's just it's like this joke. They just keep showing this liquid as a different substance every time. You know, what is happening here?
Well, let me throw this out there also. Is any of this stuff any less uncomfortable if instead of oil it's Energon? Like it's day glow pink fluid or something that comes out of a cube or something like that. I think, me personally, I think it just adds, despite the versatility of the fluids, I think it lowers the ick factor by at least one measure, simply because it's fiction fluid, it's science fiction fluid instead of just being oil. That's just me. What do you guys think?
Well, yeah, I think you're onto something. And to quote your favorite film of all time, the '86 movie, it's no live action movie, but we'll call it the Transformers movie, I guess here. But I mean,
please, it's the Transformers : the movie.
Dead Reckoning.
Part one. Of one.
But we see Energon, the Energon goodie. We've seen Energon be eaten before. So, I mean, yeah, we could have easily had this. And that got me thinking back to your earlier point of, you know, you said it, we all kind of bought the ticket. The oil isn't necessarily, it's coming out of his car door. And, you know, oil isn't necessarily in a pipe. Like, you know, these are living things. But why do they have oil in the first place? I mean, they're aliens still, right? And oil, I guess, is like a earth-based thing. So even to think of it like that they're living off this stuff, and we've seen it on Cybertron, we saw it in Auto Boot Camp, oil is a concept there. Are we just talking about two different oils here? Like maybe Earth's oil is what is like beer to the Constructicons, but then are they just so desperate that they drank some blood? Is it like someone's blood alcohol content being so high that you like want to drink it because it'll be like a shot of alcohol? I don't know what's happening here.
Well, see, and to take that analogy and tweak it ever slightly, you know, because like these Constructibots, Mix and Scrap, are coded as alcoholics. You know, that, like, you know, see our entire episode of legislation about that. This sort of comes from that as well. And there is a part of the desperation of their addiction, if you will, because like you see that their entire motivation throughout everything we see in this episode, since they've lost interest in little yellow compacts, they just want to booze, and so in the throes of their addiction are they that they will go to any lengths and do anything, including like licking it off the street or licking it off the floor, as we see later. And like it is again, like if you want to squint your eyes, it does kind of show an ugly aspect of addiction.
Yeah, that's the desperation of it all.
Because like, you know, whereas in the first episode we see them like, you know, they're rowdy and, you know, they're like kind of frat boys. Now they're kind of tweakers, actually. Like they're kind of like strung out meth heads, like and haven't been getting their fix on the regular. So that's where, like, you know, that the worm brain is really starting to get in, and they're getting like really desperate, and in their desperation, that's what makes them dangerous, as we see when they go back to the base. But before we move off of this sequence, another thing I want to say, like, you know, so much of this dialogue just kind of like, you know, tosses stuff out there really quick that you might miss. But like, while Mixmaster is lamenting that the Bumblebee oil isn't as sweet and tasty as the other stuff, it unlocks a sensory memory for them. And it's like, oh man,
Just wish I could remember where we got that really good stuff.
so they have a sensory memory of Megatron's private blend.
Oh yeah.
And so not only are they in the throes of their addiction and desperate for oil, but they're also trying to chase that dragon also. Like, the more I say, the more gross this becomes, because now I'm kind of portraying them as heroin addicts. Like they're not only are they looking to get their fix, but they're looking to get that sweetest fixed as well. Yikes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they use terms like sweet to describe it, so it's a little on them, right?
Mm-hmm. Quite so. But yeah, so they are on the trail, presumably to go back to the Autobot base.
Yes, yeah. Let's get back to. I know you're excited for this part. We're going to Decepticon HQ. You're going to see your boy here in a few minutes. So.
Yeah, as much as I like going to Meanwhile on Dinobot Island, my next favorite place is Decepticon HQ down in the subterranean mines. And I like this establishing shot that they have right off the bat. It's like, so you have just a prisoner, Isaac Sumdac, just working a console. He doesn't have any lines. He doesn't speak. He doesn't have any contribution. But I do appreciate that, Isaac Sumdac is still here, and he's still Megatron's prisoner, and he's still working on who knows what kind of inventions. Maybe he's continuing work on the Space Bridge project. Maybe he's working on other stuff. But it's just a real kind of like blink and you miss it. He's just kind of like tickling the ivories, just kind of like working a control panel there. But it's good to see Isaac again.
Yeah, it's always such kind of a knife to the gut when they show Isaac Sumdac, because it's just a reminder that Sari doesn't know where he is or if he's still alive and okay. And I think it kind of goes back to the Home Alone metaphor we were talking about earlier, where this is where it gets a little Home Alone like, is like Sari doesn't even know if her father's still alive. Like this is where, she doesn't know if her family's coming back in a way.
Is anyone even looking for him anymore? I mean, we haven't seen any updates about it at all.
Right. And I think just Porter C. Powell is probably driving that a little bit of like, what he's probably using every connection and dollar in his pocket to make sure that Isaac isn't found.
Right. I would almost like to see a check-in with that, where it's just like, hey, wait a sec, should we be looking for Isaac? No. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Hands over stacks of cash or something like that.
Yeah, there's a side story here where Fanzone, this is like a cold case that Fanzone's trying to get going. And there's all this bureaucratic red tape and his chief won't let him look into it more. And he's got to sleuth on the side and, wait till he's off hours to kind of do it. I'd like to see that story a little bit, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, and the thing that is a fascinatingly rich vein of narrative is the stories in between the stories, specifically here in season 2. It seems like a lot of our discussions within the episode, obviously we discuss the episodes at length, but it's also kind of like the subtext and the stuff between the lines and the stuff not said, a richer and deeper tapestry than I would say even season 1. There's a lot going on here.
Yeah. And who doesn't want to see, undercover Serpico Fanzone, right? I'm off duty. I'm just enjoying my drink here as he's like listening in to some sordid conversations in a seedy bar.
Well, and the dividing line, the differentiation would be like trench coat or no trench coat. It's like, well, if he's rocking the coat, then he's off on his own time, running his own off the books investigation.
And he's got to be doing like an internal monologue in the rain as he walks down the street. So, I'd never done a crazy thing until that night. Of all the dames, she had to walk into my office. That sort of
yeah.
Stand there with a tape recorder.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the tape recorder malfunctions, right? And he's like, that's why I hate machines.
It is why I hate machines. Oh man. So we again we catch up with the Decepticons. Megatron is watching this on TV. It must be in tape delay. Maybe he's got like the West Coast feed instead of like the East Coast feed that they're in a cave, so maybe they've got like, deep cable or something that they're dealing with instead of like Sari's pirate TV. But regardless, he's like, well, finally, we've tracked down the Constructicons and we can finish construction on the space bridge. So We tie back into what kind of like Megatron and the Decepticons' motivation is this season, and they want to get this space bridge built. And he mentions about the thing we talked about earlier with the signal dampeners. So what it seems like the implication is that the Decepticons have been actively looking for the Constructicons and have not been able to find them, as opposed to the Autobots who just kind of like turn on the TV and happen to see them. And it reminds me of something that the guys on Autopod Decepticast have said before, because like they, in their analysis of like the G1 episodes, they really landed on a perspective that I hadn't thought of, is that the Autobots are always reactive and the Decepticons are always proactive. And I never really understood that juxtaposition until they pointed it out on their podcast. And now I can't shake it. And I see it everywhere, including here in TFA, where it's like, you know, they're looking for them, but ironically enough, because they have the same signal dampeners, it's kind of like a rose and a thorn, or like a double-edged sword. The very technology that is to their benefit is also to their detriment when they're actually trying to find these guys to finish this construction project.
Yeah, it's kind of brilliant, and I love that they're smart enough to go there with that, and I love that you know, they're giving there is some credence to the Constructicons being desired by the Decepticons, right? Like, like it's not just like we need these guys in an episode. We need to find some superficial way to take interest in them. It ties back into this overarching plot of the space bridge construction.
For sure. So Megatron gives Blitzwing an entire barrel of his private blend, with his own branding on it. Like it's, you know, it's not quite like the ornate wine label that I think I'm envisioning for Megatron private blend. Blitzwing takes off in jet form. Meanwhile, we catch up with Scrap and Mix, and they have found their way to the factory plant, Autobot HQ. And as you know, I've talked about the behavior of these guys before, and even as they're shambling around, there is almost a zombie-esque quality to it, where they're just like, "Oh man, need oil." It's just kind of interesting to see how they are so driven by their urges here. But this gives way to one of my favorite sequences in this episode. I actually kind of like hopped up and down in my chair a little bit. So we catch up with Sari. She is hanging out in Prowl's room with the gorgeous home is where the spark is bonsai tree that's just growing. And in fact, actually, if you look, I want to talk about the decor of Prowl's room a little bit too, because like it is, I don't know if you guys have looked at it a lot, but it's an eclectic little room in that obviously you have the tree springing forth out of it, but he's got actual bonsai trees along like the walls and in the corners of it. They're like potted. He has like potted bonsai trees along with the TV. But the thing is, I didn't notice until this episode, I don't know if they're new additions, but in addition to his sweet home theater system, he much like any other dude bro fella of the era, he's got a rack full of katana blades just hanging on the wall. But the thing I really want to point out here is there is a poster of I can't tell if it's a cat or a dog, but it's a creature of some kind, like hanging on a tree limb, and it says, "Keep your chin up!" ! You know, obviously so for Prowl, that's like a three-way reference type of thing.
Yeah, that's like a twist on a twist. Or maybe I like the world where someone bought it for him. He like begrudgingly hung it up. Little gag gift.
But regardless, we catch up with Sari. She is hanging upside down off a tree limb, living her best life, listening to headphones, which is obviously what makes her oblivious to the intrusion by the Constructicons. But something that will certainly spike Mike's G1 score. Did you catch the tune that she was humming a little perhaps off key as she was hanging there in her headphones there?
Oh yeah, I'm just remembering it now. Right.
She does it a couple times and it's not quite on key. Like I remember, and somebody has told me about this, but I never pick it up. But like apparently there's a reference to that in Revenge of the Fallen, and apparently like Wheelie does something with like a thumb drive or something like that. I've watched that sequence a couple times and I keep not understanding it, but but apparently it's supposed to like sound kind of like that. And I now while I see Matt bobbing, he's nodding his head enthusiastically. So I'll skip the part where I say, "Well, if you say so," waving my hand sarcastically. But it sounds like maybe just something I keep missing.
There's also one in Dark of the Moon.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the office building, pressing the button on a printer. And
yeah,
it's making that
the
sound.
Laserbeak turns into, right? Like the printer makes the transformer sound like that eventually becomes Laserbeak. And there's also one following up in Age of Extinction where that one scientist that works for Stanley Tucci's character, his ringtone is that. And so like when they're in that chase scene at the end and Stanley Tucci calls him, he's just sitting there eating a donut and his little ringtone goes off and it's the same like do 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 do.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. That's cool.
There's a little threads of it there.
Yeah.
I wanted to say here too, but before we move on, like I love this. Not only do I love visually this moment of Sari hanging upside down, listening to music, but I love that she is doing it in Prowl's room. And that's something we've seen Prowl do, that like hang upside down. This is giving me vibes of Along Came a Spider, sort of her, as she sort of like glommed on to Optimus and idolized him a little bit and wants to be like him and dress up like him. I feel like this episode, she's doing that with Prowl, right? She wants to do anything like him. She wants to impress him even though he's not there. And now she's literally like hanging upside down in his room trying to get in his headspace.
If not for the uncomfortable connotation, I would say it's almost kind of like a Leon the Professional type of thing. With like, Natalie Portman kind of like taking on the behavior of Jean Reno, like even to the point where she's like wearing the glasses and hat and stuff like that. And yeah, I feel like she's idolizing Prowl in a big bad way that we haven't necessarily seen. Well, and it's interesting when you take this as like a family dynamic, right? So like Bumblebee is basically like a contemporary, like a brother figure. Optimus is obviously like a surrogate father stand-in. Ratchet is kind of like your cranky uncle. So that would make Prowl like a cool older brother or like a cool older cousin or something like that, or maybe like a younger, cooler uncle or something like that.
Right.
But either way, Prowl kind of fits that cool adult role. That like, I mean, Optimus could be only so cool because he's dad. Like, as cool as your dad is, your dad can only be so cool. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. Prowl kind of fits a different dynamic relationship than Bumblebee does and that Optimus does.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also showing Sari growing up a little bit. You think your dad's cool. She's a little bit sick of Bumblebee's antics, right? Like, he's almost a little immature for her now. Now she's seeing like so I think the analogy of like a cool older brother that's like old enough that maybe he's home from college kind of a thing. Like that's who she sees Prowl as.
Another thing that you kind of implied there or knocked loose there, Michael Andrews, she's certainly outgrown Bulkhead. Yeah,
that is true.
That's the other thing too. We're a ways away from Sari's birthday party and sad Bulkhead playing a teeny and impossibly tiny xylophone by himself. And suddenly I'm really sad about that.
That is sad. I think, Matthew, you can probably attest to this without getting into spoiler territory for Mike. I think that's intentional because we're about to see some I think that's playing into the dumbness of Bulkhead, which I think is going to pay off in a big way as we move into season 3, without spoiling too much for Mike.
Don't make me blow the siren here. So there's this legislation here between Scrap and Mix about trying to get through the door, and to which Mixmaster, and again, I think now's as good of a time to talk about how unabashedly Home Alone this is. You know, this is Scrap and Mix are just stand-ins for Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern at this point, and like, I don't think I noticed it. I mean, you certainly notice it more, but like even this conversation where Mixmaster goes to melt the door, you could see, much like the Joe Pesci character, there is a inherent nastiness to him that the Daniel Stern character doesn't have. Like, I mean, like they've really both in like size, proportions, looks, like they really thought that through ahead. They may have had this episode in mind even back when they were doing the initial design for the Constructicons, because now this all feels very deliberate, more so than when we first met them.
But it's funny, in your episode about Rise of the Constructicons, you mentioned that they were like those characters.
Yeah, I was just thinking back to that. Like, I wonder if I think maybe I said it, but one of us said it too, brought it up, that they look like, you know, the Sticky Bandits or the Wet Bandits. Well, I don't know, Matthew, I guess I'll straight up make it a question. Do you think what's the chicken or the egg here? Do you think they were designed sort of with those two in mind, or do you think it just came out kind of subconsciously in the designer's head that they looked like them?
I'd have to go with the latter. I think it was unintentional, and then they figured it out and just ran with it.
Because it's pretty spot on. But Home Alone is one of those things that, you know, lives in our, you know, it's like a genetic memory at this point. Like we all kind of have that vision of them. And that's one of those things that just comes out in art sometimes, you know, this iconic duo. I can see that happening accidentally.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was like when Ryan Jett from APDC was kind of talking about like the unintentional comparisons to RoboCop and Starship Troopers and all that. And like, I think like whether we're consuming pop culture or in the case of like the showrunners and writers and animators and designers, we're a product of everything we've consumed. So whether it was subconscious, unconscious, or just flat out, like while that vibe was there when we first meet them, this is where they, you know, somewhere along the way, they must have said like, well, they already kind of fit these character types. Let's push that even further. And I think I haven't watched Rise of the Constructicons again for a while, but I think they're pushing some of the design elements even further. Like I didn't notice the very Daniel Stern sideburns on Scrapper as I did this time around. It's very explicit in a way that if it was there, I didn't notice it in the previous episode. And then of course you've got old Mixmaster Joe Pesci with the friendly mutton chops, which is still it's quite a look, and then like his little his little nasty teeth, his little goblin teeth there. Again, this dude Mix he's a nasty dude.
Yeah.
In a way that, like, again, I don't know if I picked up on that earlier. You know, Scrapper is just kind of like a hapless dope, but like, again, there's something with Mix that just isn't right. He's not a good guy.
Yeah, that's 100% true. And here's my deep moment for the episode. Are we consuming pop culture, or is pop culture consuming us? Ooh. Chills, right, guys? Chills.
Yeah.
Yeah, but either way, yeah. So they've sort of they're in the process of breaching the house, and this goes back to Home Alone. Like trying to get through the front door took most of the time. These two trying to get through those icy steps. So this is like beat for beat Home Alone at this point. Mm-hmm. Across town, we see B kind of blasts into a construction site. He's laying siege to a construction vehicle. And then we get, I was like, there it is, the Contemplative Union Boy, which premiered in Nature Calls the first time around. So I was excited to see him. And he rolls down the window, and he's sort of like a dude, where's my car situation. Like there was like very chill. I was like, he is Contemplative Union Boy.
Yeah, he is of deep feeling.
He is my meme come to life, right?
Yes. But to the point that I was making, way earlier in the episode about how like the paradigm dynamic has shifted to where like the Autobots were once superheroes and now they're kind of nuisances in a way. This Sparkplug Union Boy, which incidentally he credited as Sparkplug in the credits, so that's canon. He is Sparkplug. So that's so I thought that was a. That's going to be in my G1 score, but he kind of gives B the business here a little bit. Like he's not a giant robot, that he's just like another twerp miscreant. Like I'm sure this guy has to deal with skateboarding kids coming into the construction site all the time, as opposed to this time it just happens to be a little punk kid with his little stingers, pew 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 pew. But I did think it was interesting that like this guy just gives Bumblebee lip and B's kind of ashamed a little bit.
Dude, why are you wailing on my truck?
Sorry, I thought your truck was someone else.
So back at the base, and now that Mix and Scrap are kind of stumbling around in the plant, Scrapper he's the first one to say like, hey, wait a sec.
Something gives me the creeps about this place. Like we've been here before and it didn't end too good.
And of course, Mixmaster wants nothing to do with it. He's just like, yeah, whatever. Let's just find some oil.
Yeah, their usual MO, right?
Yeah, MO.
I actually just looked up. You're right. It is credited as Sparkplug Witwicky, actually, going as far as to give that name, and it's voiced by David Kaye. I didn't know that. It's a very like mellow. I don't know. Like the delivery of it is very, unlike a voice I've seen by David Kaye so far.
Yeah, it's very subtle and very gentle. But ironically enough, I just happened to be looking at a picture of it now. If I may, very David Kaye-esque. It's like it's kind of on model. I'm sorry, David Kaye's a handsome dude. It's not my fault.
This is true. This is true. He's on the wrong side of the camera here. He's doing voices. We need that face out there.
He is not an unattractive fella, like some folks have a face for radio. So anyway, so like there's this sequence here where we get the payoff on the oil legislation again. So, Bumblebee and Bulkhead are kind of having a conversation here, but then this is so nasty, so gross. So like the giving credence to again that like the door is still Bumblebee's arm. The sticker comes off, and there's just this spurting and flowing of oil. Like, everything that's been held back just gushes forth, and it's nasty.
I wrote, "Dear Lord, in the name of all things good and holy," the amount of liquid that comes out of Bumblebee, and he's just like fine with it. He's just like, "Yep, it's a Tuesday," Like
it's like holding his arm up as it is, and there's like a puddle at his feet. I mean, like this is like Exxon Valdez at this situation here. Like just pouring oil into this ground here. It is so
someone from
messed
the
up.
EPA walks by and is like, "Oh my God, we got to do something."
So the Constructicons are kind of again wandering aimlessly through the base, and then this is where we get that confrontation. So it's like Sari is just like, "Hey, wait a sec, that what's up here? I need to go check this out." I think maybe like she hears the alarm through her headphones or something like that. But like something spurs her into action to get back into her skates and is shuttling around the base and runs into runs into these guys. Actually, no, I don't know if she actually hears the alarm, because like when she runs into them, she thinks it's the Autobots that have returned.
Whoa, watch it, Bunkhead.
It is not Bulkhead at all. It is Scrapper and Mixmaster. And there's kind of like this this moment of recognition, and this is a really cool animation moment where we, for I don't know, at least 30 seconds flat, we get like this cartoonish screaming at the top of her lungs. Like, I mean, like Tara Strong is really going for it here.
It's trying to blow our audio circuits!
What? I can't hear you.
Like, you know, we talked about on our last episode where, you know, Cree Summer really went for it here, but my goodness, this is a pretty blood curdling, terrified, again, kind of a Home Alone-esque type of thing. It's almost like Macaulay with the aftershave there.
Well, I was gonna say this is textbook Macaulay Culkin, and maybe even more so than the aftershave part. I would make it akin to running into the South Bend Shovel Slayer, the old man that scares him when he opens his door and goes inside, and he goes, "I'm not afraid anymore," and that man walks up and that's his biggest scream in the whole movie. Well, the one in the mirror is certainly more iconic, right? If we're referencing the movie Dogma, the Salma Hayek moment, she's like, the one movie that she didn't predict as a muse was the one with the screaming kid. Love that line.
So Sari obviously recognizes Mix and Scrap, but they don't recognize her, because even Mixmaster is just like, "Hey, man,
You know where we could grab some motor oil around this joint?
And then that's where Sari unleashes her sonic attack.
Right.
Not unlike Banshee from the X-Men.
Yeah, that is where it kind of broke from. I thought this was interesting because this is where it broke from the mold of Home Alone, right? Because, like, you know, there's a moment there where they could all just get along. Hey, you got some oil? But the very act of Sari screaming is what upsets them. And it kind of triggers the whole rest of this episode, which I just think is so weird, right? Like that's the impetus for them invading and everything. And I feel like there's a story where Megatron just could have been like, "Hey, do you want some oil? How about you go steal something from the Autobot base?" You know, that just seems like a little bit of a simpler setup. Instead, it's like this weird, you know, possibly drinking blood situation morphed into this girl screaming has set me off enough that I'm going to chase her around her house. I don't know, Matthew, did you kind of feel that? I mean, you know about the writing of the show kind of as much as the rest of us. It's usually known for a little more depth.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a weird setup. It really was.
Yeah, I don't know. Mike, did you kind of feel the same thing about it? I don't know. There was just something to me that didn't scream animated writing at this point.
It's kind of odd. And, you know, again, we're always reluctant to play this card, but there's several things in this episode, just in the mechanics of it, that happen just so the episode can happen.
Yeah.
So basically, like, I think the act of Sari screaming is enough to upset them. But I think the other thing also is, as she escapes, because, like, Sari's got it all wrong. Like, she assumes that they are now fully aligned with the Decepticons and that they have come to trash the base. It doesn't even occur to her that they're just looking to get their fix. You know, they're just they're just a couple tweaker addicts that are, you know, looking to strip some copper wire or something.
I think that's kind of Optimus putting that in her head too, right? Like, the whole reason the Autobots are not at the base, the mission they're going on, is that they're afraid that they've aligned with the Decepticons. So I think this is her boogeyman situation, right? This is the South Bend Shovel Slayer. This is the scariest version of them. They're drunk and they've aligned with the Decepticons.
Right. Yeah, she's like, it's all happening.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they also make this weird leap that she's screaming because she's hiding premium oil. Like, that's their next, like, jump in logic. They're like, that scream, you know, the finger thing means taxes. The scream means they're hiding oil.
But I would also say, though, that it is Sari, who debatably kind of fires the first shot in terms of like being aggressive, because she does as she escapes, she does this thing with her key that drops this door onto Scrapper.
Oh yeah.
It's, I mean, granted, it just depends upon whose POV you're at. So like from Sari's point of view, you're defending yourself and giving yourself cover while you escape. But if you're the Constructicons, who are air quotes innocently just looking for oil, that's an act of aggression. Like, it's like first she unleashes this disorientating sonic attack, and then she drops a door on my dude.
Yeah.
So of course they're going to be mad.
Actually, now that you bring it up, the sort of the last thing you want to hear when you're hungover is like somebody screaming, right? Or like somebody talking too loud. This is like the headache moment of like too loud, stop.
Exactly. And I do like this this dynamic here between Mix and Scrap, because maybe it's because she just dropped a door on him, maybe because he's more sensitive to the sonic attack, but either way, Scrap has a fear of Sari that Mix doesn't. And like they even go forth in having this conversation about, well, maybe she's the cause of our memory being scrambled. So it's like they know that they've got memento disease, that like they know that like something's not right. Something happened to us. We don't know what happened, but being in this place kind of agitates that and kind of reinvigorates some of those erased memories. Like, again, they can't piece it all together, but like there is something about Sari's terrified scream that kind of starts to, if not knock things loose, at least in their simple brains, being able to ascertain that perhaps she's the cause of it. These guys jump to a lot of conclusions, like you were saying earlier, Michael Andrews.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting take, though, that the idea that things are coming back to them a little bit, like it's sort of triggering these little hidden memories for them, and they almost don't even know like why they're kind of reverting to their like, well, we're here for oil because we're always here for oil, but like there's something driving them that's sort of like their memory coming back. I kind of like that idea.
Well, and if this was a filthier episode of Two Mikes Too Furious, I would comment on the position that Mix and Scrap find themselves in after they tumble, but this is a different episode, so I will not be making those comments.
Oh, I think Lita's dialing in. Let's put her on speaker.
Boop, boop. Hello, you guys.
Dial star 69 if you'd like us to talk about position that Mix and Scrap are in.
Wow, you've been sitting on that one. You're like, we'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. I see how red your face is. You planned this. You manufactured this, didn't you?
Maybe.
You constructed this joke into being. God damn it.
Take a bow.
Oh my goodness. But it is also interesting, like within this conversation, how abusive Mixmaster is to Scrapper. Like he decks him at one point. And is just like, snap out of it.
That little screaming mud is definitely hiding some premium oil in this joint.
But I would be remiss if I didn't call out, again, my one of the very favorite things I love about the show is like the euphemisms and like the turns of phrasing. Mix is like, what's the matter with you? You're an excavator, not a golf cart. So
grow a backhoe and let's get some oil.
I love that.
Yeah, that's a good like it's almost a play on like the science fiction writing where you gotta like you gotta do these like metaphors that pull, you look strong enough to pull the ears off a Gundam type of thing. It's almost the Transformers equivalent of that,
and yet these are like actual like Earth things as well, and I always think that's that is especially clever as well. It's like how like in certain tones and connotations things can take on their more crude meaning. Mixmaster conjures up some more green slime and slimes through a new door. And here is where we cut to Prowl, who has had no luck finding these two miscreants. But as he's checking in with both Bumblebee and Bulkhead, this is where you get a couple different things. One, you get Bumblebee really being bitchy. And it's weird because, like, Bumblebee not always the most tactically minded, but he's the one, it's like, what are we doing?
Without Sari and her key, we can't track their Allspark signal.
And on my first viewing, I bristled a little bit because one of my criticisms in previous episodes is how suddenly the Autobots have been reliant on Sari's key, for like repairs and things of that nature. I thought this was more of the same, but it really kind of isn't, because it's just Bumblebee having the wisdom to being like, dude, they must have the same cloaking technology as Decepticons. I mean, these practically are Decepticons at this point. We need the key to be able to detect Allspark energy. We're wasting our time. But it's also here where Bulkhead just off his shoulder, he's like,
I just spotted Blitzwing!
Right, yeah. Yeah, it's almost like the excessive blood loss has made Bumblebee like more coherent than he normally is. Like he's having he's had this moment of clarity that he's never had before.
So Bumblebee is so irritated here that he's like, fine, screw it.
I'm gonna call Sari.
Bebop boop 1-800 call Sari.
Yeah.
And I think it's at this point where it's like, what, Bumblebee calls her, but like she's I think she's hiding at this point, and like her phone is on like a side table or something like that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I and Matthew, I wonder if you picked up on this too, but at this moment it sort of took a turn for like horror that isn't in the source material of Home Alone. This was actually like more like a scene in a horror movie, right? Where the monster or something, or like something out of The Quiet Place, right? Where like the monster is stalking through the room and this phone goes off and she's like holding her breath in. I thought it kind of they played that more for horror than they did for anything from a comedy starring Macaulay Culkin.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I almost even took like a Taken vibe to it as well. It's like, sorry, you're about to get tooken.
Yeah.
Here's what you need to do. You're going to get tooken.
Right. Yeah, that was interesting. But it's also a practical moment because it takes the phone out of the equation. I think, that's kind of a writing element of like, well, yeah, let's address the elephant in the room. There's a phone there. There's a very easy way to solve all this. And that's something that actual Home Alone had to work with. The power lines had to be out, all these like confluence of events to make sure that, the family couldn't contact Kevin like that. That was a very built-in thing there too. So I kind of cool that they played off of that.
But regardless, Scrapper hears the phone and is actually scared by it. He picks it up. He's like, oh God, what is all this? But then again, in his desperation, Mix becomes more cruel and vicious and just basically like smacks the phone out of his hand, out of Scrapper's hand. And of course, like you said, the phone is broken, but Sari does not get tooken in this scene. They, after the phone is broken, they just kind of shamble on into the next room.
Anything, she does the tooking.
Yes.
Gotta play with this word more. I love it. I love where it's going.
I think like it's at this point where like post Tookening, she's lamenting that she ate too many candy bars. Is getting like the little tummy ache from like, because she's like booking down the hallway and like she stops at one point. She's like,
Wow, I ate way too many candy bars.
Shouldn't have eaten 2 jet vending machines full of candy. Maybe that's the problem.
Oh man. So meanwhile, as Bulkhead predicted, he knew this the whole time. It's Blitzwing. And this whole sequence is pretty awesome because like, one, always glad to see Blitzwing. And so, I mean, that is a crowd pleaser here, but like, you really get to play around with his character in this sequence because like he's arguing with himself about like, oh my God,
Autobots, I will crush them into iron filings.
No, man, Megatron says not to engage. And then it's just like, fuck that. Let's go. Which I really like this exchange between all of his different aspects of his personality here. And then in one of the more disturbing exchanges, so you have Hothead Blitzwing talking about iron filings, but then more, I guess, normal Blitzwing is like, yeah, no, we have our orders. But then you got Joker Blitzwing, and he's like,
ooh, but I like iron filings, especially sprinkled on top of servo salad.
Oh my.
Servo salad, my friends. So first of all, iron filings, which is probably something that, comes off of like armor plating or I don't know, let's call it perhaps skin in this example. And then what do servos usually refer to in the TFA context? It's like, hey, lend me a servo. So it's usually like hands and fingers. So what Joker Blitzwing is talking about here, in an episode where we already have vampire Constructicons, you have Joker Blitzwing likes to eat, have skin sprinkled all over his hand and finger salad.
Oh my.
We have vampires and cannibals.
This is some problematic appetites in this episode.
Yes. Yes.
It's not a perfect one-to-one metaphor here, but it does. You bringing that up does remind me of the line from Home Alone where Joe Pesci says, I'm going to cut off his cojones and boil them in motor oil. And then he makes that thing. He's like, first, I'm going to bite off each one of your fingers one by one and eat them when he's got him hanging on the hook in the neighbor's house.
That's right. Oh my gosh.
So there is finger and digit eating in both Home Alone and this episode. So we're safe.
And again, we've discussed before kind of how Blitzwing's powers are defined by which personality is dominant at any given time. But I love this sequence where presumably Joker Blitzwing, random Blitzwing is in control because like he attacks with both fire and ice. Yeah. And I think that's pretty cool. And I think, maybe either I wasn't paying attention to it in previous episodes and I'm just watching for it now. Now I'm really clued in to like, who attacks with what at given time. So I really think that like that's a signal that Joker is in control because you're getting both. And of course, Bulkhead knew it was Blitzwing the whole time.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those great moments where, the fact that this characterization is so built into the show now at this point, just showing the chaos face being the one in control, like you as the viewer are scared. Like, uh-oh, the stakes just got bigger. It's not the silly Arnold Schwarzenegger one, it's not the goofy German professor with the monocle one. This is the scary one. We're supposed to be scared right off the bat.
Yeah, and I do also like that Bulkhead is just like, well, I'm just going to stand here and get shot at because that's what he's going to do anyway. There's a resignation in Bulkhead's voice here. He even just kind of like puts up his hand like he's going to like try to catch him or something as Blitzwing is free falling out of the sky here as the Autobots scramble.
Yeah, there's a quiet dignity in that, the resignation, I guess. It's a little weird, but I get it. It's almost like freezing up in terror a little bit of just has to happen.
So meanwhile, we cut back to the plant, and again, the Kevin McCallistering of Sari Sumdac is nearly complete. And I swear, I mean, again, Michael Andrews, you'd probably be able to speak to this better than I could, but this bit of dialogue here feels like it is one for one with Kevin McCallister's kind of like, gear up, hype up. So Sari is, talking to the teddy bear, and she's like, hey man,
this is my house and I'm going to defend it. I'll show them I'm just as tough as they are.
And I do like a little bit of like postmodern humor too, where over her shoulder she's like, what am I doing? I'm talking to a teddy bear.
That's right. Yeah, I believe Kevin says that while he's holding a shotgun in the original one. But yeah, for me, this is the moment that it was sort of like the bless this delicious mac and cheese dinner, right? Like it's now it's time to defend the house. And yeah, that is a 1-for-1 line.
This is my house. I have to defend it.
Yeah, and I guess she's got that hockey stick. That's sort of the stand-in for the BB gun that Kevin has.
Yeah.
I guess that's her kind of weapon. And that goes right along with Transformers Animated, right? We don't have guns. We don't show guns. We're doing the hockey stick instead.
I don't know what she expected to do with it. Little wood hockey stick.
Well, I think she was going to go full Casey Jones on him, right? Like some vigilante Casey Jones action.
Cricket?
Yeah.
Cricket? Who plays cricket?
You got to know what a crumpet is to understand cricket. I'll teach you.
But yeah, no, I am here for a gear up scene. It's like, she's like, really like, putting on the skates and putting on the helmet makes a reprise. And again, kind of shout out to conversations we had in our previous episode where we speculated about what the episode Black Friday could be. And I made a specific reference to Sari, like John McClaning through like HVAC systems and like, heater vents and stuff like that. And sure enough, Sari Sumdac does literally that same thing. I'm really grateful that Michael Andrews forgot about this episode. Otherwise, he'd be like, yeah, that might be a thing that could happen in the future. I just don't know. I don't know. You just have to stay tuned.
Yeah, my mistake was great. Got it.
In my defense, I warned you I would be teasing you mercilessly.
I can't, at this moment, though, I can't remember who said it, but one of my favorite lines, maybe from this whole show, was what the front end loader was the het. I was a real big fan of that one.
What the front end loader was that?
I saw something in the trivia that said apparently the original line was supposed to be forklift. What the forklift?
Oh, that's two on the nose.
And that was like, yeah, no, you can't do that. And maybe I've got my notes mixed up, but I think like a version of that aired when they showed the episode at Comic-Con. So I think like folks have like memories of actually hearing that before it was changed, but I don't have that in front of me. I might be misremembering the way that was attributed, but regardless, the original word was forklift, and they were asked to change it.
Yeah, I think probably with the accents they're doing, it probably came across even more curse word like. So yeah, it probably was a good change.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. And meanwhile, kind of in parallel, while this is happening, the battle is joined with Blitzwing. The Autobots are trying to draw the fight away from the civilians. But in doing so, they run into an old arch nemesis of Ratchet, Traffic. I mean, the only thing that Ratchet hates more than lockdown is human traffic.
Yeah. Ratchet actually, he's had a lot of moments of just like being cool, right? Like he stopped those earlier. We see him stop the oil tankers with the magnets. He's just doing everything right. And then here comes his kryptonite: traffic, human traffic. Nope, not that phrase though.
Nope.
Damn it.
Oh. We were doing so well. Yeah. We were doing so well.
Earth traffic. There, I saved it.
Yeah, there you go. God. So here's where, like Matt had mentioned earlier, here's where you get the hockey stick attack where Sari goes in with all the gusto. And I swear I heard her hockey stick ignite like a lightsaber.
Oh, like I would love to go back and check that.
I heard a little bit of that. And, unrelated, but during like the fight with Blitzwing, and I don't know if this has been in previous episodes or not. I would have to go back and re-listen. I'm not always the best at picking up sounds and sound motifs, but I swear that Blitzwing's cannons are like from like like Empire Strikes Back, like the AT-AT blasters, or even like the AT-ST blasters from Return of the Jedi.
Let's see how tough you are without you big, bald-brained bruiser.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. We know that they do have kind of access to that soundboard, right? We actually know from the last Constructicons episode because Mixmasters, both of their stomachs, after they... Right, it made the Millennium Falcon fail to go to hyperdrive sound. It was the... So, yeah, they must like that. They must have something to do with that.
As we mentioned before, Sari escapes through the drainage pipe after her hockey stick breaks, and she confesses.
Okay, that's as far as my plan got.
But she makes it to the Autobots Communication Center, and from there... She calls Bumblebee. She returns Bumblebee's call, and I can't help but wonder, like, what telephone technology is Bumblebee working with here? Because it's like, I don't know if it's a Maz Kanata GoPro type of thing where it's like where she's like, oh man, no time to answer that now. I'm too busy having another adventure that's way too cool for the rest of this movie. Goodbye, movie. And she exits, jetpacks out of her own phone call. And people give me shit when I say,
are we really doing this? Are we going to do some Last Jedi stuff here? Come on, now, stay focused.
I'm just saying that, like, so it's like a wide shot with Bumblebee, like, you know, it's like, you know, from like waist up on this video call. But I do love the comedy of it because like the fight with Blitzwing is happening in the background where like Blitzwing is like tussling with Bulkhead and Prowl, and I love the scale being shown here, but I guess I didn't realize. I know Blitzwing is big, but in these shots, he is towering over Bulkhead. And that's kind of odd. And with the ease with which he throws Prowl around, like it's kind of a cool callback because like he picks him up and tosses him, and then like Prowl comes back for more and like he tosses him again. Like this happens like twice. But it's interesting, like Blitzwing throws Prowl and like the size difference is almost like Bumblebee to Starscream. You know, where like, you know, Bumblebee is a canonically small boy, but like, you know, again, Blitzwing is big, but I don't think he's that big. I don't know.
I was going to say, he is if we're talking toy scale, the Blitzwing does tower over the Bulkhead toy. So maybe there is something to that.
Oh, sure. Okay. I could see that. So, but Bumblebee regardless is just like, well, yeah, no. And it's a real kind of like Han Solo in the detention block type of thing. He is like, oh, we're fine here. How are you? It's like, no, coolant leak, radiation leak, you know, lots of radiation. It's like, what's your operating number? Boring conversation anyway. And as like Blitzwing like lunges into the video call. So
it's really funny you bring that up because a little bit later I have a note that there's another part that reminded me of a Han Solo line. It's when I think it's Mick says no oil is worth this. It reminded me of Han Solo being like, no reward is worth this. Like this is like chock full of secret Star Wars Easter eggs for some reason.
So I think it's at this point. So okay, so Sari knows she's officially on her own. You know, the Autobots are fully occupied, and Sari, to her credit, springs this trap pretty quickly. Like she's really thinking on her feet, and she's really brilliant and intelligent. Like she's intuited that all they want is oil. And yeah, so she springs this trap with this 3 barrels high. But prior to that, you get again, as I said, you've got like you had said earlier, Michael Anders, you kind of get that kind of real nasty Joe Pesci type of thing. Is like, oh man, I'm gonna munch your fingers off. Like they even say like,
oh, don't worry, we ain't gonna hurt you much.
Yeah, they've taken a leap to violence here. It's been progressing.
Yeah, it's gotten nasty. It's like it's become deathly serious at this point. But yeah, so basically the Constructicons, they want some of that sweet oil, and Sari has figured out how to remote control the hydraulic arms, and then just uses it to spill the oil all over the place. And this is one of the things that I was kind of talking about earlier. First of all, they're being led by their nose. Like they're literally just like they could smell it. They sniff it in the air, which gives a little bit of creepy credence to it. But like, so they can, they smell it, they lead into the room, and Sari just super casual. She's like, hey there, guys, you want some of this? But it's after the oil is spilled, and obviously they can't stay on their feet and they fall over and all of that. But like this next measure here, where in addition to being mad about falling over, they just start slurping this stuff off the floor.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, Mix was slurping it off the street earlier. Now they're just literally just lapping it up off of the floor. It's kind of disturbing from a certain point of view, certain context.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to that moment though, that was another very Home Alone moment when she's like saying that to them. That was actually my favorite part in the whole show, is in Home Alone when he goes to the treehouse and he's like, come and get me, a horse's ass, I'm calling the cops. And then they're like, come on, he's calling the cops. And Joe Pesci's character's like, from a treehouse? Which is a joke that's not as funny anymore in present day. But at the time, like, that's genius. Yeah, from a treehouse? Yeah. It's not why. He doesn't have a landline out there.
So we cut back to the interstate where the fight between all of the Autobots, and I have to emphasize this. This is all of the Autobots, including Optimus. And they are just getting their asses handed to them by noted Phase 6er Blitzwing here. Because I mean, again, they are just outmatched by this dude. It's really quite something. Like, usually we see Blitzwing kind of in tandem with Lugnut, and the duo of them usually gives any Autobots a hard time. But like, Blitzwing is almost playing with his food at this point, because like he's he certainly has the upper hand, but he is so confident in this that he allows the Autobots to just break off and have a huddle, and he's just sitting there with nonplussed with like his hands on his hips, just patiently waiting for their next volley, because like, I mean, he feels no threat from these grease grunts at all.
Well, and this is exactly what I was talking about with the sort of honor amongst villains, like fighting, right? Like there is sort of this weight and this back and forth, this expected tit for tat when it comes to battle sequences that yeah, I mean, we're seeing it now that the Constructicons don't have that. Right, like they're kind of form of chaos, but here we see a little bit of some old timey war tactics, right? Like it's like a turn-based RPG or something, like waiting for your turn here.
I like that. You get some really cool dialogue from the Blitzwings here. You got Arnold beckoning them back, saying,
"Come back here, so I can pull your pistons out through your tailpipes."
Which is, again,
I just winced.
Yeah, I mean, that's some vivid imagery. And then, of course, random Blitzwing chimes in also and says,
"Oh, and void your warranty with excess wear and tear,"
which I think is really cool as well. I mean, again, these lines of dialogue are so cool. Like, again, do Autobots have car insurance or life insurance? I guess we're talking about voiding your warranty, extended wear and tear, which I think that's a pretty cool way of putting that. But regardless, Optimus has a plan. We're gonna do Omega Formation, which don't really know what Omega Formation is, but it is pretty useless. And Bumblebee himself laments that, yeah,
Sure, send the little guy head on into battle.
and lest we forget, regardless of continuity, Bumblebee is a child soldier conscripted into service by adults. But lest we forget.
That's correct.
It's like Optimus put a gun in a child's hand and said, shoot.
Sad truth. This is a little bit tangential, but since we have the luxury of having Matthew on and being a live action fan, that moment where we're talking about like the pistons through the tailpipe thing, I just had a flash, and maybe it's because I just watched it, of Berserker and Transformers: The Last Night, when they're going through kind of Megatron's, the people he wants released, the Decepticons he wants released from prison. And Berserker is the one that he asked for that they wouldn't give him. And the only shot we see of Berserker in the movie is him being like, he's strapped to that table like Hannibal Lecter, and he's just like, I'll suck your brains. He's just, it's the crudest thing you can say. And then the lawyer's like, nope, no, there are boundaries. We're not doing that.
I just love that accidentally we've made two different unrelated Clerks references in the same episode. It's like, come on, Olaf, Berserker. That's his metal face. I would imagine, again, I've not seen this movie, but I would like to hope that as they're wheeling Berserker away, Hannibal Lecter, he's all like,
my love for you is like a truck berserker. Would you like some making fuck berserker?
That's fucking funny, man.
Did he say making fuck?
Yeah, maybe that happens. Maybe you should see it. I think that happens. Yeah,
you should watch it, Mike.
Probably should. Maybe I'll watch it one of these days. I don't know.
I guess I want to come clean a little bit, because we were talking about this on Twitter, and you had said that thing about how you always say the gun that stops the timeline from Last Night.
I do.
And it brought me to admit that, like, when I was watching Last Night, a couple weeks ago now, like, I was like, is this my favorite one? Like, as much as I love Dark of the Moon, and I will, always say that one's my favorite. Boy, I really enjoyed, out of all the 5 rewatches, I really enjoyed Last Night. I really had the most fun watching it.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. There's just a lot of good. Matthew, I guess, do you have a favorite one, or does Last Night stick out for you at all?
Age of Extinction is my favorite, but I do like a lot of the stuff in the Last Night with Cogman. Because Cogman has so many just really fun lines in that.
Yeah, brilliant.
So that is a standout.
Awesome. Interesting. Age of Extinction. Okay. All right. Big dinosaur fan?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a bunch of dinosaurs up there.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Now, Michael Andrews, if I may, if I were to speculate as to maybe why The Last Night resonates with you differently, is maybe through this adventure. I wonder if your perspective from doing a show with me and covering this material that is a little lighter on its feet, maybe you have a healthier appetite for material that's a little more zany and nonsensical. Like I wonder if I watched The Last Night now, if I would be more into it, because like I have more appetite for zaniness for its own sake. And I think that was one of the things that also kind of put me off about the other live action movies, is how grim and dark and earnest and off-puttingly self-serious they are. That's material that doesn't really resonate with me as much as I get older. So I wonder if maybe Michael Andrews, now that you're on the other side of a landmark birthday, maybe your perspective is different and may have more room in your heart for whimsy and aggressive zaniness than maybe previously.
Yeah, I actually think that's a great point. I never really thought about it that way, but in fact, yeah, I mean, I've always loved Dark of the Moon so much, but Dark of the Moon's probably the most serious one of them all. I mean, the whole first half of the movie is this sort of like grown-up conspiracy theory type thing, and then the back half, as Michael Bay has said, was Black Hawk Down with Transformers. So I mean, the whole movie's heavy start to finish, and then Last Night comes out, and it's pure wackiness, right? I mean, even that montage I was referencing earlier, where we're talking about the convicts that Megatron's trying to get released from prison, like the way they do like the flash and the freeze frame and put the name up, like that's just silly. Like that's just Michael Bay being like, what would be funny right here? I mean, there's that stuff's all over in Last Night.
So we're still in the fight with Blitzwing here. So Bumblebee attacks first, and his stingers have no effect. And it is interesting too, not to overly litigate the sliding scale of strength of weapons, because it would make no sense if Bumblebee stingers had an effect on Blitzwing. But it's one of those things. It's like, is Blitzwing so tough, or are Bumblebee stingers so weak? Because we've seen them cleave off the top of a mountain or on top of a building before. We've seen Bumblebee stingers do 9/11. So, and it's interesting that they have no effect on Blitzwing here. But that aside, we couldn't get out of this sequence with talking about an absolute Michael Andrews favorite here. You get a reprise of the fastball special.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, who doesn't love that move? That's a nice little callback to this one. Yes, thank you. Thank you for acknowledging me, Mike. Appreciate it.
Of course. You are seen.
Yes.
but it all comes to nothing, and Ratchet ends up getting taken hostage for his troubles. And it's at this point that Megatron finally figures out what's going on. I'm imagining that he's down in his oil cellar, like checking on the latest batch of his private blend, doing a lot of venting winemaker stuff where he's like, he's got like the whole like siphon thing where he's like, drawing some out, putting it in a little glass and, sniffing it. And he's like, oh, not quite ready yet.
The gravity, the temperature. Yeah.
Exactly, where he's just doing winemaking stuff, and then he comes back and he's just like, wait, what the hell is this? And he gets in Blitzwing's ear and he's just like, I told you. He's like, what are you doing?
Disengage the Autobots and find the Constructicons immediately.
Goodness. And the thing that's interesting, and so we as the audience hear both sides of the exchange, but there's also the implication that the Autobots can't hear what's going on because they think he's just a member of Cypress Hill. He's just insane in the brain.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Who would suspect that he's actually talking to someone, right?
Which is kind of funny because you flip that on its ear when Megatron was speaking to Lugnut, and Blitzwing is like, this guy's crazy.
Yeah. That's my favorite joke of the whole thing, is that after we were introduced to Blitzwing, he calls Lugnut crazy. It's like, yes. What are you guys doing? You're both fucking nuts.
just in case you were wondering.
That wasn't clear.
See, that's why Black Arachnia decides not to hang around with the Decepticons, because they're crazy.
Yeah. Yeah,
granted, she has different afflictions, but she's
the sane one. Sure.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
of that group.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose. Yeah. And how is it that theater kid Megatron is the sane one in the group? Because it seems like he's a little extra, but he's got a pretty good handle on things.
Yeah. I mean, other than the total complex of taking over the world, he's pretty sane. Sure.
Yes. Yeah. Megalomania aside. Yeah. So Blitzwing takes off. Meanwhile, back at the plant, this is where we really get the full Home Alone Kevin McCallister. Like there's no going back. Like, Sari has, is fully actualized here and uses the factory machines. We talked about getting them on the conveyor belt and riveting them up. I mean, it's arguably some gruesome stuff here where it's and again, it is very third act of Home Alone-esque, where it's she's actively taunting them as they are becoming increasingly gruesomely injured here.
I love it because not only is it smart writing and using something that we thought was just for fun earlier, right? Like we just thought, they kept going back to this, like using using those devices and the apparatus to just show her having fun, right? But now, just like in Home Alone, we're seeing something innocuous pay off. Like, there's things that Kevin learns about in that movie that he uses against the robbers later. Like, I love that it wasn't just a throwaway, those montages of her having fun. She's like, now she's using it like a weapon.
Well, and I like that she gets a one-liner in here. She tells them, like,
prepare to be deconstructed.
Which I thought was pretty cool. But like the other thing that you see here, and it's kind of like a blink and you miss it, but she beats the Prowl gauntlet. Like as like the arms are, it's the same exercise that Prowl was doing, and it's at full speed at this point, and she nails it. She makes it through it on her skates, which I thought was a really cool aspect as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's like the stakes are higher, so she finally had to like do it. There was no I can't biff it here. She had to do it.
That was pretty cool, and like and even like. I forget what the line here is, but like there's a version of the Kevin McCallister being like, have you had enough? Or are you thirsty for more? Yeah. I don't know if she actually says that, but that's, certainly what Kevin says.
You guys need a hand getting out of there.
But like they've decided they've had enough after being riveted and magnetized, and they take off.
That's a really missed opportunity if they didn't, because the thirst thing with their proclivity for oil would have been a great dig.
For sure. But yeah, and it's the line that you mentioned here, Michael Andrews. It's like, no reward is worth this. No oil is worth this.
Total Han Solo delivery, right? I can't be the only one that heard that.
No oil is worth this.
That's what I've been trying to tell you.
Oh man, and I forget where I missed it earlier, but there was earlier in the sequence when Mix is especially pissed off when he's trying to find Sari after she's escaped. He calls her a little gremlin.
You don't get away that easy, you gremlin.
And I wanted to call attention to that. I forgot it when it actually happened, but like that really resonated with me personally, because like that's how we've referred to Sari a number of times, and in her gremlin energy. And like, so I thought they wrote that line for me, 15 years ago, 15 years later, to where it's like, one of these days, somebody on a podcast is going to refer to this character as a gremlin on the regular. So let's really evoke that.
Yeah. Yeah, she certainly is this episode. She's big gremlin energy the whole time, running around through their legs, very, very Gizmo-like.
And again, it's interesting. It solidifies here now that the Constructicons have a healthy, legitimate fear of Sari Sumdac, which I love.
Right.
That's pretty terrific.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So the Autobots come home, and they Dadimus Prime here. It's like, they fear the worst, and he's like, oh my God, it's worse. We've been attacked. Fans away the tears. Everybody is very concerned, and I love how Sari Sumdac just walks into frame like a fucking boss, just wiping the dust off her hands like it's nothing. So cool. Big moment for Sari.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really great. And I think it's kind of cool that the reason the Autobots couldn't get home to her was because of Blitzwing. And I think that's kind of cool to like, because in the movie, like the plane, the airport and the plane was a big reason that they couldn't get back home to Kevin in time. So like in both instances, right, it's a flight that's causing the problem.
I wonder if that was intentional.
Yeah, Optimus is more like the mom and the dad in this situation, but he's also like Buzz at the sight of all the junk food, right?
Oh my God.
Sorry!
What'd you do to my stuff?
So good here. And earlier in the episode, I had made a comment that the dynamic between Optimus and Sari feels like something taken out of season 1. And this kind of denouement, kind of cap off on it, is kind of what put me on that path, because like they have this conversation where Sari's like, yeah, man, I'm part of the team. I defended myself. I, drove them away. And Optimus, again, very warmly and with sincerity, is like,
I apologize for underestimating you, Sari. You performed bravely today.
This is an exchange they've had before. Like, they've had this conversation a few times. And while I do appreciate the explanations for each individual situation, it feels like there's a part of Optimus that, much like myself in my observations, can't quite get myself to trust that Sari is truly capable. Like, Optimus just there's something preventing him from fully accepting that, because he keeps having these resets.
I'm so torn on this ending, because I love that we're cashing in on the Optimus and Sari dynamic, but I also think there's a missed opportunity here to have kind of Prowl be the person that kind of comes home, and pretty cool how you didn't burn down the joint, kind of a thing. Like, you did good, kid, and I don't know, just tying in with how we started the episode. Like, I feel like that would have been such a good bookend closing,
and still have Optimus have the candy wrappers line.
Yeah,
like let him still be dad. But I agree with you. I think that would be cool. Or give those lines to Bulkhead or Ratchet or Bumblebee, that kind of thing. Where somebody other than Optimus to say like, hey, that's pretty cool. But I mean, you nailed it though, Michael Anders. It's got to be Prowl.
Yeah, it's a Prowl moment for sure. Interesting.
So that's ending number 1. And as we know, all of these episodes have multiple endings, especially as this is the last stop before the epic 2-part finale coming up. But we catch up with Mixmaster and Scrapper. They are on the road, kind of licking their wounds, kind of kicking sand, kicking a can.
Licking their wounds is, I don't want to hear it this episode.
Oh no.
Gross.
Ew. Hang on, time out. At what point did Bumblebee's arm stop bleeding? Because like it stopped at some point, like during the fight.
Oil drained from his body. I don't know.
He's like, there's no more. I die. Oh no.
It's withered away.
Yes.
You're just one of those Energon zombies now from Prime.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Or it's more like a Blade 2, like he sort of like willows away into dust at sunrise, like while one of the other Transformers is holding him, just kind of drifts off.
Because as I'm just kind of like skimming through the episode here, like on the scrubber, it seems like it's like as soon as they get stuck in traffic and the fight with Blitzwing, that just gets dropped. Like, after it's no longer of relevance or value, and like there isn't like a application of a second sticker or anything like that. It's just like the show just kind of forgot about it, I guess, for as much as we discussed it.
They slapped a Decepticon suck my popsicle bumper sticker over it. Right? Revenge of the Fallen.
Oh my God. Here's another thing. Oh my God. It comes all the way back around. Let's travel back to Halloween times, and along came a spider. What was Bumblebee's Halloween costume?
The vampire.
He was Count Dracubot. I want to drink your motor oil.
Oh my. It was there the whole time. We were being telegraphed this from the beginning.
We ate the whole plate. The whole plate. Who has it? Who has it?
Yeah, man, I'm still a virgin.
So Blitzwing catches up with Mix and Scrap, and he offers them some oil, but not just any oil. First of all, this barrel has a very specific symbol on it Not that Mix and Scrap would notice that, but that might have some symbolic association later as we go on. See, I could do secret foreshadowing as well. I could predict stuff I haven't seen yet. But yeah, so it's interesting, like Mixmaster takes a swig of this, and we talked about sensory memories earlier. It's like suddenly that unlocks. He's like, that's the stuff.
I remember now. Hey, where did you get this?
That is the stuff that I remembered. That's the stuff that I've been craving and chasing this entire time. And Blitzwing, just being a real smoothie, he's like, there's more where that came from. And they depart off into the sunset, and somebody called Porky Pig, because we're just doing straight up Looney Tunes, and it is a that's all folks ending. Right. It's like the end of Mandalorian season 3 or something like that. He's going to get that frog or something. But that is the episode. Sorry, no one's home. And again, this feels like a really good spot to leave before we get into whatever awaits us in the next two-parter coming up. I personally cannot wait. But yeah, I guess before we move on to our next couple segments, I guess let's do some wrap up and final thoughts. Michael Andrews, you want to start us off with some reflection?
Yeah, I just talking with you guys about this episode has made me come around to it. When I first watched it, just very silly. Like this is just a very silly episode. I enjoyed it, but didn't need to be there. Filler. I know we don't like to use that word here, but filler. But now I've come around to it. I think it was really neat. I think there was not only really careful homages to Home Alone, but just some of the setup for stuff at the end that looked like just random happenings to me actually did pay off. So I thought that was really cool. Yeah, I dig this episode. I'm glad it exists.
How about you, Matt? You picked this episode to come join us on. Any new insights from your most recent viewing, and then after your discussion with us, anything that resonated with you that might be new? Because like that's one of the cool things about doing this show with Michael Andrews is like looking at it with a impossibly critical eye brings up new insights, and even like a lot of the stuff during the discussion rattles a bunch of stuff free that lots of subtext and text and implications and fan fiction and alternate plots and all that other stuff that comes out during. But what was kind of your takeaway coming back to Sorry No One's Home in this context?
There was something I noticed in the very end of my latest rewatch. As it's fading to black, you hear a helicopter sound. And I was like, why do you hear a helicopter there? Because it had to have been placed there for a reason, right?
Yeah, that's interesting.
So I've been trying to figure out any reason for that, and I have no idea.
I love it. Yeah, I don't know what that could be either. I'm just trying to think ahead too without revealing anything to Mike. But yeah, they're
right.
That seems like that's something they wouldn't have had to have thrown in if it weren't going to come up later. Interesting.
Wow. Maybe Springer is going to show up. I don't know. No, I don't know. I don't want to get greedy with wanting more 86 characters. But yeah, no, that's fascinating. For me, like I loved it. Like I didn't run into any difficulties with it, even at first blush, because like I think I was coming off of our previous episode, and it being so thematically tied to the fan fiction we had created kind of gave me a different experience than I think I would have otherwise watching this one. But yeah, no, I thought it was really fun. And it wasn't until our discussion here how one-to-one the Home Alone stuff is. Like going into it, and in a lot of my notes, I kept putting like Home Alone / Die Hard or Die Hard / Home Alone, kind of entangling those. But as we go further, it's like, this isn't Die Hard at all. It's all Home Alone. Like the only thing that's really Die Hard is that one scene where Sari skates through the pipe. And even then that's a stretch. So yeah, that was a delight for me.
Yeah, it makes me wonder. I'm excited to see his third episode that he does in season 3, Todd Casey, because both of his episodes now have been sort of shot for shot remakes of film, right? Like the Space Barnacles, Nature Calls was basically The Thing. And this was like Home Alone. So I wonder if the third one is a straight up, like, movie remake.
Well, and I'm, it is difficult, increasingly difficult for me to avoid spoilers, obviously, but even like seeing episode titles, like really gets my juices going. And coming off of Auto Boot Camp and what the title of that third Todd Casey episode is, it's like, if I wasn't excited for it already, now I'm especially excited because like that could mean several different things. And I don't know what any of those things are, and you'll have to find out if any of those things actually come true when we get to that. So that's, again, one of the exciting aspects of the podcast. So with that, I guess let's transition into our next segment, and that is Mike's G1 score. And for this one, putting the broken record legislation aside, because they're obviously you have Constructicons, and obviously this is a sequel episode, and sequel episodes kind of get points deducted. There's no human supervillains here, so you don't lose any points there. But I appreciate the subtle nods, like the references were really subtle this time around. Like you got like the bumper sticker, you've got the song. So I thought that was all pretty cool. I give and of course, obviously the not just the return of Sparkplug, but the fact that you cement that he is indeed Sparkplug Witwicky. So for all of that, I give this one a 4.7. where it's like just under like the halfway cusp. And you could toss extra points for the Home Alone imagery as well. But like, yeah, I think 4.7 kind of puts it in like, there's a lot of, this is more references and Easter eggs rather than like overt plot stuff. Like I think I remember like the first Dinobots episode, I gave like an inordinarily high score because I was like, oh my God, it's Dinobots, that kind of thing. But now that we've kind of settled into the cadence of TFA, it's like you got to do a little more to turn my head on the G1 scale. But stuff like where you're using like a I Heart Autobots sticker, kind of like pretty much kind of like lifting like the I Heart New York sticker from like City of Steel or something like that. It's like that's kind of where my alligator brain goes. He's big and heavy, maybe a little bit of both, but no, it's like, and I love seeing the return of Contemplative Union Boy. I can't wait for the return of those memes. But yeah, no, this one was a pretty solid. Like, I don't know if I would recommend this to a G1er and say like, oh man, give this TFA a shot, because I would think Sari Sumdac is a savory spice. And much like with savory spices, it's not for everybody. Like I was on a panel where like, people were talking about like least favorite human characters, and somebody over their shoulder said Sari Sumdac. And I get that she's not everybody's favorite.
Name names.
I don't remember who it was.
Well, actually, it's interesting you bring that up though, because it kind of, I guess, since I have not only a live action fan, I have a Prime fan on here too. I think, Matt, I think some of the best human characters come out of Prime. I really think they found a way to use those kids well. I liked all of them. First of all, do you like how do you feel about the Prime kids?
I love them, especially Jack. He's my favorite.
Oh, Jack rules. Yeah. Yeah, they're all great. But I guess where I was going with that is that, prior to Prime coming out, we have a bit of a gap there. Sari was I feel like Sari was kind of beloved until we saw what the kids could be in Prime. Sari was really holding down the fort for like good human sidekicks.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody think about that too, or do you agree, disagree? I guess we've never really talked about like where we're at on Sari as we get into this.
So back on kind of like the pilot episode of Two Mikes, Too Furious, which was like an episode of Mike Seibert Radio where we talked about Along Came a Spider the first time on Halloween or Halloween adjacent times. And that was my first encounter with the character. And you asked me then, and I'm like, no, I think she's got spunk and moxie and she's fun. And I'm kind of glad that that's what my first impression was of her, because I don't know if not seeing her in the Optimus Prime costume, especially doing the voice, oh, look at me, I'm Optimus Prime. It's like, I think that moment really helped me with her, because like, I think if I had just met her as being like this awkward, obnoxious kid that doesn't fit in with the other kids her age, I think that wouldn't have sufficient on-ramping for me to get on board with her character. But now, like, as she continues to grow and develop in every single episode, it seems like every episode there is incremental growth. Like, I mean, like, she's had a birthday in canon with during the show. So it's interesting how the show is kind of presenting her aging in real time. So I find that particularly fascinating in a way that, again, like, you don't get to see Spike grow up until there's a time jump. And he's like, hey, Ironhide, tell my son Daniel that I miss him, not to be confused with my son Fred. Or, I have to specify that his name is I'm pretty sure that kid's Christian name is my son, Daniel. I mean, it's just weird, just weird on-ramping and line delivery there. But seriously, like, Spike doesn't really get any kind of like character development across 2 entire seasons of a show. Like, he resets just like every other character, whereas Sari, again, continues to learn and grow. Which I think is really cool. And again, she has setbacks and resets and things like that. But like, for the most part, I like her character because I get to see her do more and be more than just Bumblebee's buddy in mischief. But also, while not losing that thread, also like her appetite for mischief will never be satisfied. So, and I love that as well. She's got that same Dennis the Menace energy that I like about TFA Bumblebee, and I love them as a tandem duo. So anyway, I think that's kind of my thesis on Sari as we see her in season 2 here.
I love it. And Matthew, I guess, you don't have to be as verbose as Mike Seibert was. We all can't be knowing that.
Because nobody is.
Nobody is.
Yeah, I feel like she gets a lot more development than a lot of the human characters do, at least in animation. The only other human I can think of that gets kind of the same level would be Agent Fowler in Prime, where he goes from hating the Autobots to basically being best friends with them. And same with the humans too.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great leap too there. Good point.
Speaking of Commissioner Gordon, that kind of thing. For sure. Yeah.
For sure.
No, that's, yeah. And you get to see an arc but if I may, I would say that Sari's arc has even more resonance because it's literally a child growing up, and so you have some of that too. You've got some of that coming with rage situation there by Michael Andrews books. They're awesome.
Little subliminal plug there. Buy Michael Andrews books. Buy Michael Andrews books.
Buy. So anytime you hear Ryan Jett say buy,
he's actually saying BUI, Michael Andrews books.
BUI, Michael Andrews books. Too mad, too furious.
Spin the record backwards. Buy the books.
Yeah, right here you play it back.
Oh, that is amazing.
Actually, if you play that recording backwards while watching Dark of the Moon, it's like a totally different message, man.
Oh no. And by no, I mean yes. All right. So coming up next, let's crack open the mailbag.
Mail time. The mail's here. Here's the mail that never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail. When it comes, I want a whale. Mail!
This is going to be a weird part of the show for me because we always read Matthew Barberio mail, but he's on the show. What's happening here?
I have planned for this contingency.
Okay.
Who else is there?
Easy, that's our show.
Even going back to our last episode when I was reading from the mailbag, I prepared for this eventuality. So as we dip into the mailbag, as we always do, we start with the YouTube comments. Our YouTube channel has kind of become a hub of sorts for folks to give us lovely commentary. Obviously, Matthew is the founder of the Commenter Book Club, it would seem, but other folks have followed suit as well. So this is going to be a very rare not Matthew Barberio writes episode, because it would feel weird to read your own comments back to you. But we're going to go back a few episodes to our episode on A Fistful of Energon, that the iconic episode where I became a filthy Prowl Down shipper. And we start with It's a Hostile Takeover, aka Ichabod Drift, a lover of the preview haiku. They write, another great discussion on a very underrated episode. All three of you brought up little things I didn't pay as much attention to metaphorically. I especially love Prowl casting off his mods at the climax. It's right there to pick up on, but sometimes discussions like these are needed to really highlight how clever this show almost always is. Abby was brilliant and brought a lot of fantastic insight. Plus, I always enjoy hearing how different Transformers fans get into the fandom. I'd been mulling reaching out for a guest appearance as well for a while now, but she may have inspired me to reserve a guest spot in season 3 once I get an actual mic for my computer. Also, because the season 2 episode I would request to be on is the next one. Speaking of, another excellent preview haiku from Michael Andrews. You know I'm ready for this discussion, as I alluded to in the previous comments. Thanks for the great entertainment as always. Transform and rise up, Mikes. Again, that from our good friend Ichabod Drift.
Ichabod Drift championing the preview haiku.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Ichabod Drift brings up a good point to a rule that I didn't know we had, but you have to have a mic to be a mic, I think is one of the
our buddy Stuart writes, thoughtful and engaging episode, Mike, and Abby. I'm excited to hear Mike Seibert's reaction and G1 scores on each episode, ! And Michael Andrews uncovering new details and insights, ! Looking forward to the next one. And this is a question directly for Abby, so hopefully Abby is listening and watching out on YouTube and can respond either via email or via comment on the Twitter. But Stuart asks, by the way, Abby, which YouTube channel did you listen to for the comic dubs of the IDW run? And I did a little bit of research, and I couldn't figure that one out for myself. Otherwise, I would have posted it and responded. That might be a secret that Abby takes out to sea with her. We'll see. But yeah, and also if there is a channel that you like, where folks are doing like, kind of like radio play style renditions of the IDW comics, feel free and drop us a line, and we'll post that or talk about it during the show in a upcoming listener feedback segment. Okay, so looting around in the YouTube commentary and in the mailbag, I found this. This was on Autoboot Decepticamp 2 mid-game, the back half of our crossover with the APDC guys, and my buddy Nick, who is a huge supporter of all of my podcasts. He listens to us all the time, but like he commented and said, "Oh man, I got some nerd rage with the incorrect facts during the last 15 minutes of the pop culture history segment." Turns out we between like Ryan Jett and me and all of us, we got like a bunch of stuff wrong with the MCU Incredible Hulk movie. Apparently we talked about the wrong post-credit scene, because like basically what it is like Bruce Banner isn't even there. It's like General Thunderbolt Ross rolling up to Tony Stark, talking about like making a team or something like that. And there were like a couple other incongruities there that I don't remember off the top of my head. Somebody was not dead. Lou Ferrigno. We talked about like Lou Ferrigno. That man is very much alive. Very much alive. So it was like, it's so funny because like for all of the things we've gotten wrong, and we've gotten a bunch of stuff wrong, like incorrect placements of episodes or misattributed quotes or things like that. Like we do get stuff wrong all the time, but I think it's funny that this is the thing that that kind of set my buddy Nick off so much. And ironically enough, that's not content we usually do. We don't do like geek history stuff and really kind of get into like nerd history or real history. And I just think that that's funny that like the one time we dip our toes into that's the one time that we get stuff so wrong for folks to comment on. So maybe we'll just stick to commentary on Transformers.
Two things on that. One, I blame the stingers. We were all a few stingers deep at that point in the show. And two, maybe if we want to get conspiracy brain, maybe Ryan Jett was sabotaging us. Like I just got done watching Newsroom about the fake the season where they did like the fake news story. Like maybe Ryan Jett came on and gave a fake facts in his interviews so that we would be to discredit our journalism.
Oh, that's amazing. I'll do you one better. And this kind of ties into your recent game night. I was watching on History Channel the Toys That Made America, and it was the dual history of Trivial Pursuit and Pictionary. And they which basically spawned what we now know as game night. Like it was like adults getting together to play board games. Like those are the two games that are most pointed to before there were any Settlers of Catan, before anybody took a Ticket to Ride or whatever. I need to find other board games so I'm not just making references to those two. Not everybody has a robust Sari exclamation point collection as I do. Some people just like Monopoly. It's okay to like a board game, even though I don't. Anyway, so in the origin of Trivial Pursuit, the guys, these two adorable cherub-faced Canadians, couldn't come up with enough trivia questions, so they bought a trivia book that had like 6,000 trivia things to it. And in this book, some of which the questions either were lifted directly from the book or like they were inspired and like reworded them. Regardless, a lot of the material from this book ended up in the game. And after the game became like a massive success, the author of the book brought a lawsuit. And it was like, well, hey man, you're using my questions. No, well, come on, you can't copyright facts. How about this one where what's Columbo's first name? And it's like, yeah, what about it? He's like, that's a fake question. I put that fake fact in the book just in case something like this happened. I forget what it's called. Whoa. It was like a trivia thing in the show where it's like there's a couple false facts in there as landmines for plagiarism. So it's like, wow. I know you plagiarized my stuff because you used the fake facts, that kind of thing. And it's like
genius.
Yeah.
Diabolical.
In a way. And so, ironically enough, the case was thrown out of court because the judge said you can't copyright facts. You can't copyright trivia. That kind of thing. So like you can't have like proprietary trivia questions, I guess, which is very fascinating. I learned a lot about that, but I also learned a lot about, game night, contemporary game night. So, so that is it for the YouTube comments. We'll cinch up that bag for now. But before we move on, and in the spirit of having Matthew with us, and I promised some live action legislation. I had let me just a second here. Let me find this. I had a series of tweets between Michael Andrews and Alpha Magnus, like right around the time of our Velocity episode. So this is going pretty far back into the season, but like I had posted about our Velocity episode. I was like, yeah, it's the one where Bumblebee gets involved with an illegal underground street racing circuit while investigating a mysterious blue car. It's ludicrous! ! Which I was particularly proud of that tweet. But
love it.
But in there, Alpha Magnus kind of puts like this like super thread up that Michael Andrews ends up interacting with, but Alpha Magnus wrote, this was pretty much the premise for the Transformers live action show I was developing back when the 2007 movie came out. Essentially, Fast and the Furious meets Bayverse, where the Autobots need to stay in alt mode more to keep up a ruse and also save CGI money. Nest and the Furious LOL, he puts in that introductory tweet, which is pretty cool. He goes on to say the main Decepticons would have been the Stunticons, and characters like Double Dealer and Punch Counterpunch would be the real interesting parts of the plot. Lockdown would be a neutral force, but by the third movie, they mutilated anything of a world that they built. Sad face.
That's true.
So, yeah. So it looks like there's some legislation here where you guys are arguing. Like Michael Andrews, you said, like, you had me right up until the last sentence, but I too love this concept. Always wanted to see the bots have to hustle with a $sign for the S, obviously. I once outlined a story about a stealth Autobot operative tracking twin Decepticons, Wheeler and Dealer, that were using the battery trade to launder Energon. And then the conversation kind of goes off the rails about you and Alpha Magnus arguing about what the trajectory of the live action movies about, dismantling Nest and hunting Autobots and all of that. But
I don't know if arguing is the word I'd use. Honestly, his tweet like really inspired me. I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I'm missing in my life, is a live action Nest themed like side story undercover thing. I really want that thing to happen. Yeah. And then I would love to litigate with him in person. And I also wanted to see, I think where we would split is like, I wanted to see like Megan Fox's character come back. I wanted them to like have to recruit Michaela to like, you know, because she has this kind of car background and she has history with Autobots, like she'd be a great contact for this. And then it got me thinking, you know, what was Michaela doing during like the last night when the world is sort of post-apocalyptic? Like what I feel like she has almost a Cade Yeager type thing going on where she's sort of like servicing Autobots and Decepticons and trying to bring them back to life. Matthew, are you team Michaela or team Carly when it comes to live action? I guess
definitely Michaela.
Yeah, all right.
I didn't like Carly much at all.
No, she's all right, but I wouldn't have traded her.
No,
but I love this comment from Michael Anders. He's like, so like Epps and Lennox posing as racers to flush out cons ? You could even do something with that exclamation point, sort of Tales of Nest of pre-ROTF even, which I like that.
Yeah.
But that's just basically Too Fast, Too Furious at that point, right? You had that 2M, 2F brain rot, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Never mind the fact that it's literally Tyrese.
Yeah.
Just Tyrese. So that's what it is. So you swap out Josh Duhamel for Paul Walker, R.I.P. And then you just that's what it is. It's literally Too Fast, Too Furious with Josh Duhamel in the Paul Walker role, and all the cars are Transformers.
Boom.
That's
done.
That's what you do.
You got half the footage already shot. What do we need?
Right? Oh man. So yeah, I mean, I and it gets back to a core concept of Transformers that I think is jettisoned very quickly. Like I've seen it we've seen it here in TFA, the concept of robots in disguise. And it's like, you know, after, you know, season 1, the Autobots can just walk around. You know, there's no need to be in disguise. Like, you know, you even see some of that in Earthspark, where it's like, you know, they have to be in disguise. You know, Bumblebee faked his death and now he has to be in disguise. And it's something that it always starts off strong, but is like the first thing to get jettisoned. And I always feel like the concept is always worse for it, because, you know, it's to me, it maybe it's just hardwired 80s kid branding, but for me, it's you know, Transformers, more than meets the eye, robots in disguise, you know, and I feel like we drift so far from that to where even like some of my very favorite stories, like in like the comic books, it's like we're just doing Star Trek with Transformers, which is fine, but half the time they forget to be vehicles. It's like our buddy Ryan Jett says, just be cars. And like they forget to be vehicles. And I don't know. And again, that's why this TFA stuff resonates with me so much, because so much of it, they are driving places. And I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think too, there's a way to do it tastefully, right? Like it'd be sort of a, you know, with some clever writing, and have sort of a Knight Rider vibe where they're just kind of talking to the car, they're doing the voice. If you know, I'm just a firm believer in strong writing. If you come up with a premise that they need to stay in bot form and then make a really compelling human story, you know, so much so that you're lost in like the crime and the underworld and you know, cliffhangers, like I feel like that could work as a show.
But that reminds me that like you can do something conceptually like that without having to, you know, do a lot of VFX budget. You almost take like a Beast Wars take on it, where it's like, you know, to conserve energy, we have to stay in vehicle mode or something like that. Like,
right.
I mean, there's ways around it. Like, I almost wish that you would have like the budgetary limitations of the 90s, to where it's like, well, they can't be robots, they can only be cars. And then for like one episode or a finale or something, sure, they get to be robots. Now, maybe that's not as entirely sustainable, but like, I don't know. I like having limitations to make you more clever. Like I don't want to go on like this whole damn rant about my problem with like the Hollywood machine of late, but that's kind of the problem, is like when nothing is impossible, everything is possible, and that makes it boring.
100% agree. I think if you look at something like Legacy of Monarch, I don't know if you're hot or cold on that show, but I feel like that was successful in we maybe don't have the budget to show a monster fight all the time, but we can use it sparingly, and then just have a really compelling human driven drama.
But yeah, that's how you do a Godzilla show with no Godzilla in it. You just make everything else around it compelling, and it can work. I mean, criminy, you can do that in a movie. Look at Godzilla -1, for goodness sake. It's like the least interesting parts is when Godzilla shows up. But yet Godzilla's presence colors the entire movie. It's like a shroud. It's like a cloud that hangs over everything. Oh man. I want to get that Blu-ray box set. Like it's like imported from Japan. It's prohibitively expensive, but it's the only reason I didn't pre-order it day one is because it's like a 4-disc set, but all of the special features are in Japanese with no English subtitles. I'm like, well, I can't do anything with a disc of special features that I can't enjoy. Dang it. I mean, because like having the movie in Japanese with English subtitles is actually my preference. Like, I think there's a dub on Netflix, but like, no thanks.
Right.
Thanks.
Truly.
Anyway, we're drifting. We're Tokyo drifting here. All right. So before we get to the to Ichabod Drift's favorite segment, the Michael Andrews haiku preview of our next episode, got a couple things I would like to talk about. I'll talk about Cybfest Northwest coming up here in just a couple short weeks. It is almost here, folks. If you have not booked your tickets to come to the Seattle area on August 3rd, get on it, friends, because it's going to be buck wild and it's going to be fun. I will talk about that in just a brief moment here. But before then, Matthew, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We owe you one. You've been doing such good PR for us. We had to have you on.
Absolutely. Is there anything that you would like to plug or promote? Anything you want to give shout outs to while we're here? Like folks, like we said, it's every podcast is somebody's first podcast. So if there's anything you want to steer our audience towards, now would be a great time to mention that.
Well, I have a Transformers fan page on Facebook. You can follow Transformers Fans Unite.
Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
It'll be a good spot to be, because hopefully by the end of the year, I'm going to start launching the casting for a Transformers live-action prequel audio drama that I'm working on writing.
Take my money.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And so whatever I do with that, it'll be a lot through that page. So if you're interested in that, good spot to be.
That's excellent. I will put a link in the show notes for folks to check that out, and I would recommend folks do that. If you like what we do, then you'll definitely dig what Matt is doing there as well. And when you get around to doing like audio drama stuff, don't forget about your podcaster friends. I'm sure we could lend a servo when the time comes.
Sounds good.
And then, obviously, shout out to Big Cat Rescue, saving the wildcats as well. And yeah, Matt, anything else you'd like to shout out or promote?
No, I think that's it.
Cool. Well, and again, thank you so much for being a part of our experience as the sun's getting real low where you're at. It looks like it's getting real dark where you're at.
Yeah, we had a storm move in. It started thundering. I didn't even know it was supposed to.
It is. I thought it was just the sun going down, like as it was getting closer to more nighttime. But well, hopefully you're not impacted by the storms there. We're still stuck in heat wave town here in Seattle. Hey, Michael Andrews, how's the weather out in Minnesota?
It's sunny today, but interestingly enough, we did have bad storms last night. After as my party was wrapping up, the power went out at my place. Some of my guests were stuck on a major highway because of downed trees. You have to be a pretty big tree to gum up an entire freeway. So that was a monster storm.
Goodness. Well, hopefully everybody made it around safely, and as the weather has gotten a little better. Hopefully the weather is good on August 3rd in the Seattle area, because I want to remind folks again that if you want to see me in person, you can come up to the Seattle area for Cybfest Northwest. It's our unofficial Transformers convention with a Pacific Northwest twist by the fans for the fans. I am delighted to be a part of the organization team, and we are really excited for this year's show. Obviously, starting at the very top, we are more than thrilled to welcome our very special guest, the one and only Sue Blue, voice actor extraordinaire, voice of RC and G1, as well as here in Transformers Animated, as well as a voice director for Transformers Animated. So there's definitely a firm TFA connection there as well. And I vaguely talked about this in our last episode, and timing is so funny because like the day after our episode went out and I put like a vague tease in there, I'm like, oh man, you'll have to check out our website because maybe I figure we might have an exclusive that you figure you might want. We have announced our official exclusive figure for Cybfest Northwest, Carbot Darcy. That's her third party name. It's in partnership with our friends at Blue Forge, and they have basically taken inspiration from the unproduced prototype of 1986 RC, with like the misaligned shoulders and the weird face, and basically taken all of those design cues and from scratch has manufactured an entire action figure that is fully transformable and is handmade, hand painted, and it is a fantastic representation of RC. And we are really excited to be able to offer that to our fans and attendees. Quantities will be extremely limited. I think there's only going to be like 30 available for purchase because basically they are all handmade. If you want to learn more information about that, you could go to cybfestnw.com. Unfortunately, there will not be any available for order. They are an in-person exclusive only, so you'll have to get in line and buy them. But we're really excited for Cybfest. We're welcoming back Cast Iron Orcas, the robotics team. So we have actual robots at our toy robot convention. We also have Scott returning with his Bumblebee Camaro. So we have in addition to actual robots, we have actual robot cars as well. We have an exclusive print from artist Ben Hansen. We also have a exclusive design t-shirt, which I am actually wearing on the recording, that shows a zooming RC in car mode that is available through our TeePublic store, again, linked on the website. And it's all of the things. It's the return of trivia, Michael Andrews' favorite, the Transforming Contest, which incidentally, there was an aspect of the Transforming Contest that I forgot to mention the last time that we talked. The prize for the Transforming Contest is the figure. If you make it through the bracket tournament, you win the figure. And I kind of undersold that a little bit the last time through. So,
that's
but like
awesome.
I said, yeah. So I mean, we're really excited for that. You have the expanded dealer room, the children's play area, artists, local as well as folks that are traveling. We're having a coloring contest, which is going to be a lot of fun, as well as raffles. You got a guy with Legos that are actual transforming Transformers. You have a lot of customs that are going to be on display. It's more than just a toy show. It's a whole damn convention, and we are really excited and really proud of this year's show. So that is going to be happening on August 3rd, 2024 at the Kent Commons Community Center, about 20 miles south of Seattle. And it's going to be a lot of fun. Depending upon what time you're listening to this, pre-registration may have already closed, but you are still more than welcome to walk up day of. It'll just cost you an extra couple bucks to get in, but tickets are very cheap. It's like $12 to get in day of. And there's discounts for families, because one of the things that we really like to do as a mission statement for Cybfest Northwest is an emphasis on being family friendly. Like, you know, I've seen families grow and develop to a point where I get like existential dread from it. Like I've seen like kids go from being like in a stroller to toddling around to now they're like actual people. And they're
panelists.
Yeah, exactly. And it weirds me out. Speaking of panelists, our friends from Swerve's Bar are coming up. They're bringing their whole damn crew. You got Onyx, you got Kilobyte, you got Clickbait, who is coming in and traveling, and Heximus is coming up with them as well. And all of them will have adjacent artist tables. And that's just going to be a ton of fun. If I could figure out how to get my ankles to orientate enough, it may be the return of the annual Heeley Derby. Whereas like, if you want to see a 45-year-old man try to wear Heelys enough to make their way down the hallway, you'll have to see that in person. I have been practicing and it has not been going well. Like my ankle doesn't tilt. I don't have enough points of articulation. My ankle tilt is not as strong as it used to be, and I am having a really hard time trying to get my Heeley on. I have, in fact, actually, I kind of had a little bit of a fall the other day, and I've not healed from my healing. So we'll see how that goes. I may have to just concede defeat this time around, but. Regardless, I'll try to show up for funsies there. But anyway, all of that and more available at cybfestnw.com. I'll have links in the show notes. That's Cybfest Northwest 2024 coming up on August 3rd at the Kent Commons Community Center, across from the Showware Center and right by Kent Station Shopping Center. So it's a little bit of a hub. It's a cool spot. And I'm just really excited for this year's convention. I'm almost as excited for this year's convention as I'm excited for this year's convention to be over, because like it has been a lot of planning and preparation, and we are super excited. We're super stoked, but we're also incredibly tired. So it's going to be a ton of fun. It's going to be fun. First time fans, long time fans. It's a very family community forward type of event, and I could not be more proud to be a part of the team. And I will leave it there for now, because now I think, my friends, it is I'm going to run across the room and I'm going to dim the lights, unlike those storm clouds that are dimming the light for Matt for him. It actually looks like the clouds are starting to break a little bit, but either way, let's dim the lights as we tap the bongos. And it is time, my friends, for Ichabod Drift's favorite segment of the show, the Michael Andrews preview of our next episode.
Yes, and I assure you this one's accurate this time. Now the curtain falls. As things come to a bulkhead, Meggs plays his endgame.
Nice. That doesn't sound diabolical or sinister at all.
It was tough doing that one. I mean, we're here. We're at the freaking end of season 2. My gosh.
That's amazing. You know what? And, I know we just did plugs. I know I just talked a lot about Cybfest, but as I was sitting here getting itchy, I was futzing around with my friendship bracelet that I got from Lord of the Torbs at TFCon. Folks, I don't know if you've been watching the social medias at all, but Whirl has been doing a whole bunch of friendship bracelets, including a 2 Mikes 2 Furious friendship bracelet.
What?
So I'm really excited to receive that friendship and depending upon how it goes, maybe a second one.
Is there a second friendship we could receive?
There might be. I don't know, and maybe I'll actually mail you some buttons too. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Oh man, but friends, that is it. There's no more. I got the no more gas in the tank.
Everything that can be said about Transformers has been said. Shut it down. Shut down the blog.
I'm ready for pizza. I'm ready to make good choices. Yeah, yes. They seem to have shut off the air conditioning in my studio too. It's really quite warm. Disproportionately warm. I don't like it.
Getting kind of hot in these rhinos.
Cut print.
Here it is.
Here it is. Post-show banter.
Well, Matthew, thank you so much for being on. It was a you really can't come to a head moment here of finally having you on.
Really, really great to be here. Had a lot of fun.
I hope you'll keep listening after this. I hope this wasn't now that you've seen how the sausage.
Want to be a guest on the show? Send us an email to mikes2furious@gmail.com. Interact with us on social media. You can follow 2 Mikes 2 Furious on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 2 Mikes 2 Furious. What is it about them live action movies that sticks with you and resonates with you? You know, as we've, What I've June is over and we're firmly into What I've July, as we're celebrating the live action movies as we're talking about Transformers animated.
Yeah, it was my G1. Like I, saw the first one. I was I think 7 years old when I first saw it. So that was my introduction to it.
Yeah.
And so, of course, you do develop a love for your first thing more than others sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I find the stories to be really fun. And, the spectacle is great. It feels like Transformers. It feels like you could step into the screen and you're really in the middle of a giant robot war. And I love that about it.
Yeah, I think I've kind of mentioned this before a few times now, but just it's exciting to actually have you, Matt, here to talk about it in person. So I'm going to bring it up again, but I just don't think anyone has landed the Michael Bay vision for Transformers as far as like spatially and the things you can do with it. And those movies are there's so much real pyrotechnics and effects going on all the time. It's just it really rewatching them the last 5 or the first 5 movies, like I was just blown away by how good it looks. Mm-hmm. Whereas and then if you go to watch Rise of the Beasts after it, Rise of the Beasts almost looks like a cartoon because so much of it is just pulled back CGI. It's tough. It's tough to go from that to that.
Yeah. Nobody does it like Michael Bay. He had this vision that is unmatched.
Yeah, he truly saw them like there, while he's looking up at skyscrapers and buildings in an empty field. It's like he could see them right there.
And the practical effects too, like those, I feel like those are so important. They rely too much, like, the Marvel movies. It's so much green screen and you never really feel like it's real. Whereas with those, it's so much real explosions and cars doing real stunts and
visceral, mm-hmm. I think is, and therefore a visual betrayal, darker than
well, and you could practically feel the heat from the explosions. And I've said it in context to this podcast, one of the most iconic moments, I think, in all of Transformers is in 2007 when Optimus first reveals himself to Sam and Michaela. And like Michael Andrews, like you said, about tilting at windmills and looking at the sky and the skyscrapers. Michael Bay appreciates the scale of the Transformers in a way that other filmmakers haven't. Like, you know, we've talked about Rise of the Beast, we've talked about Bumblebee, and like, you know, how they're more character focused, and there are aspects of that I appreciate, but there's a little bit of magic that's missing, like that sense of scale and wonderment, to where it's like, you know, it's cool that you know, Bumblebee is there, but you never really get the sense of like, oh my God, that is a giant robot, you know, that kind of thing. And like, I think it's only the live action movies, especially the early ones, because like, I think the latter ones also kind of have that problem of like, when Transformers are just commonplace hanging out with folks, you kind of lose that sense of spectacle, kind of similar to the Marvel movies, where it's like, oh, the world is used to superheroes running around. It's not new. It's not a novelty anymore. But that's not necessarily a knock on the filmmaking. But again, like I said, that at the very least, that first trio of movies, the Holy Trinity is, as Michael Andrews likes to call it, the Holy Trilogy of 2007, Revenge of the Fallen and Dark of the Moon. It's like that certainly presents the scale in a way that is still impressive and is still remarkable and iconic. So for me, at least, I think I've done my penance for the fans of the live action movie.
Yeah, no, you know, this was the whole reason I wanted Matt on, is so that we would outrank you 2-1, and you'd finally get to admit some love for the Transformers movies. Yeah. Whew. This is a good day. It's a good day for Michael Andrews.
Friends, shall we talk about an episode?
Yeah, I think we should finally get around. I guess to tie it all back together, one of the things we would not have without the live action movies is Transformers Animated, because that was a direct response from those films. And I'll say it again, just because I think it's the most amazing factoid about this show. Bumblebee wasn't even going to be in it. Bumblebee wasn't even a household name in Transformers fandom at that point. It was going to be Hotshot, and because of the movies, they're like, we think people like Bumblebee, and now we're here talking about Bumblebee and Sari, the most iconic human robot duo maybe in Transformers media, and we almost didn't have them.